Chapter 690. The innate divine body was the legendary body that inherited the origin power of heaven and earth. It was rumored that there were hundreds of them. Yi Tianjuan's chaotic divine body, Han Yueli's profound frost body, and Chu Wuyin's profound transformation divine body were all innate divine bodies. However, the innate divine bodies also had their own ranking. The chaotic divine body was ranked 10th among the countless innate divine bodies. It was enough to rank in the top 10 among the countless innate divine bodies. There were less than 100 profound frost bodies and profound transformation divine bodies. The chaotic divine body was one of the earliest powers in heaven and earth. The chaotic divine body that Yi Tianjun inherited represented that he had inherited one of the most ancient powers in heaven and earth. This power was enough to suppress most powers in the world. Even Chu Fengmian's battle dragon strength was not as ancient as the chaotic divine body. Under this pressure, Chu Fengmian could only use 1/10 of his full strength. Yi Tianjuan's move used the chaotic divine body, the most ancient power, to suppress everything. Even if one's strength was stronger than others, they would be suppressed and lose at least 10 times their strength. It was almost impossible for him to defeat Yi Tianjun after losing 10 times his strength in a battle. Because of this, even some old antiques who had transcended life and death would be suppressed by Yi Tianjuan's chaotic divine body. This move was simply a heavenly fate technique. Anyone who fought against it would be going against heaven's will. Chaotic divine domain. Chu Fengmian said coldly. This was the chaotic divine domain that Yi Tianjun created with the chaotic divine body. Anyone who was enveloped in it would be suppressed by the chaotic divine body at all times. It seemed that Yi Tianjun had already mastered most of the chaotic divine body's power to create the chaotic divine body. It seems that you know quite a lot. Yi Tianjun said with a smile after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. Since you know about the chaotic divine domain, you must know that you don't have the ability to fight against me. I was born stronger than you. It's easy for me to kill you if I use my full strength. You should be proud that you can force me to use my full strength. This is the first time I've used the chaotic divine domain since it was created. Yi Tianjuan's words were filled with boundless arrogance. He had an innate divine body and was born to be superior to others. When he used the chaotic divine territory, not to mention a martial artist of the same realm, even an expert of a higher realm than him would not be able to defeat him. After losing 10 times his power, even someone who had transcended life and death would find it difficult to defeat him. He refused to believe that he would still lose once he used the Chaos God domain. So what if your swordsmanship is powerful? In front of my Chaos domain, all your resistance will be meaningless. All your fortunate encounters and tricks will be useless. Yi Tianjun looked at Chu Fengmian and laughed. From the moment we were fated, it was impossible for you to defeat me. Now, let's see how you're going to resist. As Yi Tianjun spoke, he began to move. He made a grabbing motion with his hand, and the spiritual energy around him transformed into a long stick. Then, he smashed the stick toward Chu Fengmian. In this domain, Yi Tianjun was the supreme emperor. Everything was under his control. This strike was several times more powerful than the previous one, destroying everything in its path. As for Chu Fengmian, he was affected by the pressure, and his strength was weakened by 10 times. It would be extremely difficult to resist this strike. Boom! With a loud bang, the stick hit Chu Fengmian's body. A series of explosions rang out continuously. Chu Fengmian's body gradually disappeared in the smoke. Outside the arena, the whole place was silent. When everyone saw that Chu Fengmian had turned the situation around, they thought that Chu Fengmian might be able to fight Yi Tianjun. Who would have thought that the situation would reverse once again at this moment? And this time, Chu Fengmian was forced into a desperate situation. Many pairs of eyes were fixed on Chu Fengmian. Whether or not Chu Fengmian could withstand this strike, none of the martial artists present had confidence in their hearts. Roar! Suddenly, the roar of a dragon could be heard coming from the smoke. This dragon's roar dispersed the smoke, and Chu Fengmian's body suddenly jumped out from it. Dragon scales surrounded Chu Fengmian's body, forming a formation. It was the power of the ancient Dragon King's body. Countless sword lights surrounded Chu Fengmian. At a glance, there were at least 100,000 of them, forming a sword formation. The mysterious black sword formation and the power of the ancient Dragon King's body burst out together to resist the power of Yi Tianjun's strike. But even so, Chu Fengmian's clothes were tattered. The power of this strike was indeed strong. If it wasn't for Chu Fengmian's body being far tougher than an ordinary person's, even with the protection of the sword formation, Chu Fengmian would have been shaken to death. Now, Chu Fengmian's mysterious black sword formation and his ancient Dragon King's body were enough to resist Yi Tianjun's power in the chaotic domain of gods. Chu Fengmian can actually resist this strike. Countless people were shocked to see that Chu Fengmian was not injured. Although Chu Fengmian looked a little embarrassed now. However, even though they were outside the arena, they could clearly feel how powerful Yi Tianjun's strike was. If it were not for the restriction on the arena. If they were slightly affected by the aftermath, they would all be dead. And Chu Fengmian was in the arena, bearing the brunt of Yi Tianjun's strongest strike. Now, he was able to withstand it, which was extremely shocking. At least with this kind of strength, it would be easy for him to win the first place in the previous martial arts competitions. But in this competition, Yi Tianjun was even more monstrous. It was definitely the saddest thing to be born in the same era as such a person. Even if Chu Fengmian could resist Yi Tianjun's strike, no one was optimistic about Chu Fengmian's chances. It was already so difficult to resist once. Next, there would be a second and third time. Chu Fengmian would lose sooner or later. With the chaotic domain of gods, Yi Tianjun was the symbol of invincibility. And Chu Fengmian would not be able to resist it sooner or later. Compared to an innate divine body, the gap between a mortal body and an innate divine body was huge. The gap was too big. Moreover, Yi Tianjun was a genius among geniuses. None of the people present could think of a way to defeat such a character. Chapter 691. You're actually able to withstand this strike. Yi Tianjun looked at Chu Fengmian and sneered. Not bad. Your sword array and your body must have had a lot of fortuitous encounters. It's a waste for you to have these fortuitous encounters. It's better for them to belong to me. With these fortuitous encounters and my chaotic divine body, no one in the northern region can compete with me. I have to thank you for obtaining so many fortuitous encounters for me. Now that you're no longer useful, your only fate is to die. Yi Tianjun didn't give Chu Fengmian any time to breathe as he spoke. The staff in his hand fell once again, bombarding Chu Fengmian. The staff fell, and the shadow was like a mountain, bombarding Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's expression didn't change. With a thought, the sword array suddenly rose, and 10,000 swords merged into one, turning into an extremely sharp sword light. Chu Fengmian pointed his palm, and directly hit the staff. Bam! The two forces collided, and Chu Fengmian's body was pushed back again. The web between his thumb and index finger was cracked by the force. However, under the power of the Battle Dragon bloodline and the Builder Tree branch, the wounds on Chu Fengmian's body were healed easily. His body suddenly moved, and directly turned into a shadow, rushing towards Yi Tianjun. Courting death? Seeing Chu Fengmian's action, Yi Tianjun sneered. At this time, Chu Fengmian actually dared to take the initiative to attack him. In the chaotic divine realm, Chu Fengmian's strength was suppressed. With the sword array and the strength of his body, Chu Fengmian might be able to resist a little. However, in Yi Tianjun's eyes, taking the initiative to attack was simply courting death. Chaos. Yi Tianjun's aura crazily rose. He held the staff in his hand, and once again bombarded Chu Fengmian. The speed of this staff was much faster than before. Almost in an instant, it directly hit Chu Fengmian's body. However, the moment the power of this staff approached Chu Fengmian's body, a special force suddenly burst out. An extremely special power suddenly burst out from Chu Fengmian's body. This power was so pure that it even surpassed the chaotic power. In the depths of Chu Fengmian's body, the power of his natal sword origin was fully activated at this moment. His natal sword origin was created with the power of creation. Sword cultivators did not cultivate domains, but they had their own natal sword essence. The power of fortune instantly filled Chu Fengmian's body, completely dispelling the power of chaos around Chu Fengmian, causing the pressure on his body to disappear in an instant. No matter how strong the power of chaos was, it was absolutely no match for the power of creation. Creation was the most domineering force in the world. It was almost inconceivable. As soon as the force of fortune appeared, it swept away the surrounding force of chaos, freeing Chu Fengmian from the suppression. Without the suppression of the chaotic divine domain, Chu Fengmian's mind flickered, and the ancestral dragon supreme sword suddenly appeared in his hand. At this moment, it was time for the real counterattack. Earlier, Chu Fengmian did not immediately use the creation power. He was planning to use it all of a sudden. Chu Fengmian took a few steps and came directly in front of Yi Tianjun. Hiss! The blade of the sword flashed. A flash of sword light suddenly shot up to the sky. The sword light was so powerful that it would shock anyone who saw it. The power of the natal sword origin and Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship burst out at the same time. Yi Tianjun's staff was abruptly cut in half by the sword light. Even the staff in his hand was directly shattered. How is this possible? Yi Tianjun shouted angrily in horror. The sudden change in front of him was completely out of his expectations. Chu Fengmian actually broke free from the suppression of his chaotic divine domain. This was simply beyond his imagination. The power of chaos was an extremely domineering existence among the innate powers. Even many martial artists with innate divine bodies would be suppressed by his chaotic divine domain. However, Chu Fengmian, who was just a mortal, was able to withstand it. This was simply beyond common sense. Facing Chu Fengmian's sudden sword light, Yi Tianjun was extremely flustered. He immediately gathered his spiritual energy and formed a wall in front of him, ready to block it. At the same time, Yi Tianjun's figure continuously retreated at the same time, trying to gain some time to breathe. He had to analyze this sudden change and find out what was going on. But at this moment, how could Chu Fengmian give Yi Tianjun any time to breathe? Chu Fengmian had the power of creation, but he could not show it. He could only use it in his body to alleviate the suppression of the chaotic divine domain. In fact, Chu Fengmian did not have any advantage in terms of strength compared to Yi Tianjun. They could only be regarded as equals. If Chu Fengmian gave Yi Tianjun some time to breathe, it would not be so easy for Chu Fengmian to defeat him. Break! Chu Fengmian said indifferently, and the ancestral dragon supreme sword's blade light shone even brighter. The sword light slashed out, turning into 1,000-meter sword qi that directly shattered the wall that Yi Tianjun had just condensed. At the same time, the sword light slashed directly at Yi Tianjun's body as the wall shattered. Despicable brat, you dare to trick me? Very well, it seems like you have other fortuitous encounters. However, no matter how many fortuitous encounters you have, you will definitely lose today. Yi Tianjun's expression gradually calmed down, but his eyes became even colder. Everyone could see that Yi Tianjun was truly enraged. Previously, Yi Tianjun still wanted to toy with Chu Fengmian, so he did not use his full strength to deal with Chu Fengmian. Now, Yi Tianjun only had one goal in mind, and that was to kill Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian, do you think that you are the only one who had a fortuitous encounter in the Void Ocean? You are wrong. My fortuitous encounter is no less than yours. Yi Tianjun abruptly said. Jade Rui, appear. An innate Jade Rui suddenly appeared above Yi Tianjun's head. The moment the innate Jade Rui appeared, a ray of multicolored light fell from it and surrounded Yi Tianjun's body. The multicolored light seemed thin, but no one dared to underestimate the power contained within it. As soon as the innate Jade Rui appeared, Yi Tianjun immediately controlled it. A ray of multicolored light flew out from it and blocked Chu Fengmian's sword qi. Chapter 692. As soon as the innate Jade Rui appeared, a ray of light appeared under Yi Tianjun's control. Chu Fengmian's sword qi hit the ray of light and made a hissing sound. All the power was neutralized by the ray of light. The innate Jade Rui was an opportunity that Yi Tianjun had obtained from Lord Rui's cave abode, one of the 6 ancient cave abodes in the Void Ocean. Chu Fengmian had obtained Dragon Emperor Yan's cave abode and the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword. Yi Tianjun's adventure was no less than Chu Fengmian's. This innate Jade Scepter was an out-and-out heaven-grade spiritual weapon. Even among the countless heaven-grade spiritual weapons, it was enough to be called a famous one. Lord Rui had once dominated the 9 regions with the help of this innate Jade Rui. Now that the innate Jade Rui had fallen into Yi Tianjun's hands, it was a great help that could double Yi Tianjun's strength. The innate Jade Rui is indeed in Yi Tianjun's hands. Chu Fengmian thought to himself when he saw Yi Tianjun take out the innate Jade Rui. Yi Tianjun had obtained Lord Rui's cave abode, so it was not strange that the innate Jade Rui was in his hands. However, the innate Jade Rui's defense was much stronger than Chu Fengmian had imagined. Even his sword Qi could not break it. In that case, it would definitely be an extremely troublesome method. Although the innate Jade Rui's offensive power was not strong, its defensive power was definitely one of the top heaven-grade spiritual weapons. It would not be easy for Chu Fengmian to break it. Before defeating Yi Tianjun, he had to deal with the innate Jade Rui. It seems that Yi Tianjun has not refined this innate Jade Rui yet. Chu Fengmian observed at a glance that the power on the innate Jade Rui was extremely pure and did not have a trace of chaotic power. Yi Tianjun had the chaotic divine body, so all the spiritual weapons that he had refined should have some chaotic power. However, the innate Jade Rui did not have any. Chu Fengmian observed it for a while and found the problem. Although the innate Jade Rui was powerful, it was a pure spiritual weapon. Yi Tianjun's chaotic energy clashed with the Jade Scepter's power. Therefore, it wouldn't be easy for Yi Tianjun to refine the innate Jade Rui. It seemed that he hadn't had the innate Jade Rui for long enough to refine it completely. Right now, Yi Tianjun could only use the power of the innate Jade Rui by activating his spiritual power. However, it had not been refined, which meant that others could also find an opportunity to take it away. Instead of breaking through the defense of the innate Jade Rui, it would be easier to just take the innate Jade Rui. In an instant, Chu Fengmian came up with a countermeasure to deal with the innate Jade Rui. Brat, give up. Your sword can't even break through my defense. With the innate Jade Scepter in his hand, Yi Tianjun looked even more arrogant. It can't be broken? Chu Fengmian said with a mocking smile. There's nothing in this world that I can't break. After Chu Fengmian finished speaking, he didn't waste any more words and his body moved once again. With the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword in hand, Chu Fengmian took a step forward and approached Yi Tianjun. Countless sword qi slashed out in an instant. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's mind moved, and the sword formation around him began to dance, forming a killing array that surrounded Yi Tianjun. The power of 100,000 spiritual swords gathered at one point and formed the largest sword formation, which suddenly fell from the sky. These two moves appeared almost at the same time, leaving Yi Tianjun with no chance of dodging. Naive. Seeing the countless attacks coming, Yi Tianjun's face was as arrogant as ever. He sneered and began to activate the innate Jade Rui again. Rays of 7-colored light slowly fell from the innate Jade Rui and enveloped Yi Tianjun's body. Countless sword qi hit the 7-colored light, but it was useless. They were all bounced off. Even the killing array formed by 100,000 spiritual swords could do nothing to the innate Jade Rui. Chu Fengmian's continuous attacks seemed to be trying to break the innate Jade Rui's defense. However, all the sword qi and sword qi were bounced off when they hit the innate Jade Rui. None of the sword qi could really shake the innate Jade Rui's defense. At the same time, the countless onlookers could see that Chu Fengmian's attacks seemed fierce. However, the power of each sword qi was no longer comparable to before. It seemed that he had consumed a lot of spiritual energy. No matter how powerful a warrior was, there was a limit to the amount of spiritual energy in his body. Such a ferocious attack was extremely taxing on the spiritual energy in his body. Yi Tianjun sneered when he saw this scene. Hiding in the light of the innate Jade Rui, he didn't need to consume any spiritual energy. He watched as Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy became weaker and weaker, and the smile on his face became brighter and brighter. The moment Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy was exhausted would be the moment he attacked and killed Chu Fengmian. Hiss! Chu Fengmian held the ancestral dragon supreme sword in his hand and slashed out another sword qi. This sword qi slashed at the seven-colored light around Yi Tianjun and was immediately dissolved. However, Chu Fengmian's body clearly stopped the moment he slashed out the sword qi. It seemed that his spiritual energy was about to run out. Yi Tianjun saw all of this. "Boy, have you had enough? Now it's time for you to die." Yi Tianjun suddenly laughed and gathered his spiritual energy to form a long staff again. It dispersed the seven-colored light around him and smashed the staff toward Chu Fengmian. In Yi Tianjun's opinion, this was the best opportunity to kill Chu Fengmian while his spiritual energy was running out. However, Yi Tianjun didn't see it. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile the moment his seven-colored light broke through. "Is that so? You're the one who deserves to die." Chu Fengmian sneered. His stagnant body moved in an instant. The spiritual energy in his body was completely recovered in an instant. The sword qi around him had finished forming and turned into a huge spiritual sword. It immediately descended and shattered the power of Yi Tianjun's staff. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's right hand transformed into the battle dragon claw and clawed at Yi Tianjun. Boom! The battle dragon claw was formed in an instant and suddenly clawed at Yi Tianjun's body. Chapter 693. Oh no! Yi Tianjun's expression changed as he sensed the danger. His body was not as tough as Chu Fengmian's. If the battle dragon's claw touched him, he would be killed instantly. He hurriedly gathered his spiritual energy and activated the innate Jade Rui. Rays of colorful light shrouded him as he prepared to resist the battle dragon's claw. However, the battle dragon's claw suddenly changed its trajectory. It didn't grab Yi Tianjun, but the innate Jade Rui in the air. As a heaven-grade spiritual artifact, the innate Jade Rui had its own consciousness. When the battle dragon's claw reached it, it began to gather colorful light as a defense. Break! Chu Fengmian roared as the battle dragon's claw attacked the innate Jade Rui. Boom! There was a loud noise. Not only was the arena shaking, the entire martial imperial city was shaking. Everyone could feel the power of the collision and how powerful it was. Crack! With a clear and crisp sound. A crack began to appear on the seven-colored light surrounding the Jade Scepter. Then, it was directly shattered by the power of the battle dragon claw. Oh no! Yi Tianjun suddenly realized what was going on. Chu Fengmian had been pretending for so long, but his real goal was not to deal with him. Instead, he wanted to deal with the innate Jade Rui. Without the innate Jade Rui, it would be easy for Chu Fengmian to kill Yi Tianjun. At this critical moment, Yi Tianjun gathered the power of the innate Jade Rui to protect his body, which left the innate Jade Rui's defense empty. The defense around the innate Jade Rui was shattered. Chu Fengmian moved his body and grabbed the innate Jade Rui. Back! Yi Tianjun's body suddenly moved. Without caring about anything else, he gathered all his spiritual energy and attacked Chu Fengmian. Chaotic universe. The shadow behind Yi Tianjun also went crazy with his anger. He let out an angry roar and gathered his spiritual energy to form a fist of wind that shot toward Chu Fengmian. I'm not interested in fighting with you now, He Xian. Chu Fengmian's face turned cold when he saw Yi Tianjun's attack. He moved his mind and the He Xian sword formation immediately surrounded Yi Tianjun. Many spiritual swords slashed at Yi Tianjun. Chu Fengmian planned to use the He Xian sword formation to delay Yi Tianjun so that he would have time to deal with the innate Jade Rui. Boom! Boom! After falling into Chu Fengmian's hand, the innate Jade Scepter was still struggling, trying to break free from his grasp. Innate Jade Scepter, no matter how powerful you are, you have yet to acknowledge me as your master. Do you think you can resist me? Battle dragons, suppress it. Jade Rui Xian was the heavenly Jade Rui's Chu Fengmian Jade Rui. Once the innate Jade Rui broke free and fell into Yi Tianjun's hands, it would be almost impossible for Chu Fengmian to find such an opportunity. Chu Fengmian had to subdue this innate Jade Rui. Boom boom boom. Chu Fengmian's battle dragon's might kept suppressing the innate Jade Rui. However, the innate Jade Rui seemed to have been in contact with Yi Tianjun for a long time and was contaminated with some chaotic energy. It resisted Chu Fengmian's dragon's might and prevented Chu Fengmian from refining it. Damn it! A spiritual weapon is so powerful. Chu Fengmian's face turned cold. Since the innate Jade Rui was so resistant, it was almost impossible for him to refine it. Even under the suppression of the innate Jade Rui cup, it was still resisting Chu Fengmian's refinement. In that case, I'll destroy you. Chu Fengmian's face was ferocious. The innate Jade Rui must not fall into Yi Tianjun's hands. Even if Chu Fengmian could not refine it, he would not give it back to Yi Tianjun. The blade of the ancestral dragon supreme sword in Chu Fengmian's hand was drawn once again. As Chu Fengmian swung the sword, it directly slashed at the innate jade scepter. Bam! The two heaven-grade spiritual weapons collided with each other. The two forces were evenly matched. However, the innate Jade Rui was still suppressed by Chu Fengmian's power. Soon, the innate Jade Rui's momentum weakened. Boom! Boom! The innate Jade Rui was still urging its spiritual power to escape from Chu Fengmian's suppression. The power of its attacks grew stronger and stronger. There were even a few times when it almost escaped from Chu Fengmian's suppression. However, Chu Fengmian knew that the innate Jade Rui was only resisting at the end of its flight. The innate Jade Rui did not recognize a master. Yi Tianjun could not turn the situation around now that he had no power to support it. The stronger the innate Jade Rui's attacks were, the more power Chu Fengmian gathered to suppress it. In an instant, Chu Fengmian felt the innate Jade Rui's momentum weakening. Creation. Chu Fengmian had been waiting for this opportunity. The power of his natal sword origin burst out. The power of creation appeared on the ancestral dragon's supreme sword and slashed at the innate Jade Rui. Countless cracks appeared on the innate Jade Rui scepter. As the creation energy continued to erode it, the innate Jade Rui scepter finally emitted a crisp sound. The innate Jade Rui, a heaven-grade spiritual weapon, was smashed into countless pieces by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's heart ached when a heaven-grade spiritual weapon was destroyed. The innate Jade Rui was not like other heaven-grade spiritual weapons. It was a heaven-grade spiritual weapon that was once famous in the 9 regions. But now, there was no better way than this. With a wave of his hand, Chu Fengmian collected all the fragments. Even the fragments of a heaven-grade spiritual weapon were precious treasures that had great uses. Damn it! Yi Tianjun's heart bled when he saw the innate Jade Rui being smashed into pieces by Chu Fengmian. This was a spiritual artifact that he had obtained after going through countless dangers. It was one of his greatest trump cards at the moment. Yi Tianjun did not intend to use the innate Jade Rui before refining it. However, he had no choice but to use it in the face of Chu Fengmian's strong attack. But now, the innate Jade Rui had been smashed into pieces by Chu Fengmian. Besides feeling furious, Yi Tianjun also felt a little flustered. The innate Jade Rui had played a crucial role in his fight against Chu Fengmian. Now that he had lost the innate Jade Rui, it was uncertain whether he could still contend against Chu Fengmian. Chapter 694. Chu Fengmian broke a heaven-grade spiritual artifact just like that? Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw Chu Fengmian shatter the innate Jade Rui. A heaven-grade spiritual artifact. The innate Jade Rui was originally a defensive spiritual artifact. Even the weakest heaven-grade spiritual artifact had reached the level of a heaven-grade spiritual artifact. It was not an easy task to shatter it. Moreover, the shattering of the innate Jade Rui drew countless gazes toward Yi Tianjun. Yi Tianjun had the upper hand against Chu Fengmian with the innate Jade Rui, but now that he had lost his reliance, how could he contend against Chu Fengmian? Yi Tianjun's face had also turned extremely gloomy. Retreat. Yi Tianjun wanted to retreat the moment he saw the innate Jade Rui shatter. He bombarded the black profound sword formation with his spiritual power, hoping to create an opening to escape. Without the innate Jade Rui, it would be extremely difficult for him to contend with Chu Fengmian. Go! Yi Tianjun continued to bombard the surrounding black mystic sword formation, intending to blast a hole through it. He already planned to escape. As long as he could escape from the arena, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to kill him once he reached the outside world. He had already made it into the top 10. Even if he lost this battle, he could still head to the Omega Heaven. Even if he was suppressed by Chu Fengmian for now, he would be able to survive the Great Calamity. With his innate divine body, he was confident that he could trample Chu Fengmian under his feet again. Yi Tianjun quickly calculated everything in his mind. He gathered spiritual power in his palm and struck out with his palm. Cracks appeared on the spiritual swords in the sword formation in front of him, almost shattering them. A gap appeared in the sword formation. Many of the spiritual swords in the black profound sword formation were mid-grade spiritual artifacts. Even if they were already in formation, they were still extremely fragile in front of Yi Tianjun's power. You want to escape? I said you will die today. Chu Fengmian looked at Yi Tianjun and sneered. Once Yi Tianjun escaped, there would be countless troubles in the future. This arena was the best opportunity for Chu Fengmian to kill Yi Tianjun. How could he give it up? Chu Fengmian's mind flickered. The fragments of the innate Jade Rui suddenly appeared in his hand and he threw them into the sword formation. Along with the activation of a surge of spiritual power, these innate Jade Scepter fragments were all shattered, turning into tiny particles that merged into each of the spiritual swords. The 100,000 spiritual swords were all infused with the power of the innate Jade Rui. Among them, the spiritual swords that had cracks absorbed even more particles of the innate Jade Rui. The cracks on the spiritual swords were all repaired, and their overall power was even several times stronger than before. The fragments of the innate Jade Rui merged into the black profound sword formation. It was enough to increase the power of the black mysterious sword formation by 3 times. Whoosh! 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 Countless flashes of the swords flashed flashes of the swords once again. 100,000 spiritual swords surrounded Yi Tianjun, making it impossible for him to escape even if he wanted to. Yi Tianjun, go to hell. Even with your innate divine body, you are no match for me. All your adventures will belong to me and I will devour them. Chu Fengmian looked at Yi Tianjun, as if he were an absolute emperor. The insufferably arrogant Yi Tianjun was trapped by the sword formation and looked extremely miserable. Yi Tianjun, who used to be the number 1 in Beimang Academy and had an innate divine body, was now cornered by Chu Fengmian. This was a result that no one had ever thought of. Damn it! Damn it! I won't die. I am a peerless genius with an innate divine body. I am blessed by the heavens. How can I die at the hands of this brat? Yi Tianjun roared crazily in the sword formation. Break for me. He gathered spiritual power and bombarded the black profound sword formation. However, no matter how crazy he was, he could not shake the black profound sword formation. The innate Jade Rui merged with the innate sword formation had tripled its power. It was no longer something that Yi Tianjun could shake. What genius! I, Chu Fengmian, have killed geniuses all my life. You are just one of the souls that will perish under my sword. Go to hell. Chu Fengmian looked at Yi Tianjun and said indifferently. He raised the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword and infused it with spiritual power. Sword intent and spiritual power were all infused into the blade. Clearly, he was condensing a killing sword. His 9-realm sword art and his newest sword Dao had been completely integrated into this sword. Die! Chu Fengmian did not waste any time and slashed at Yi Tianjun with his sword. Yi Tianjun was also extremely lucky. He had countless fortuitous encounters. If he didn't die, the enlightenment he gained from this battle would be enough to make his strength even more terrifying. Chu Fengmian wanted to seize the opportunity to kill him. In this way, all of Yi Tianjun's adventures would also belong to Chu Fengmian. taking Yi Tianjun's adventures would be enough to make Chu Fengmian's strength even stronger. Hiss! This sword light was 10,000 feet long. As it descended from the sky, many of the restrictions on the stage were shattered. Boom! Suddenly, a powerful force burst out from the arena. This power seemed to have come from outside the arena. It had used a supreme method to break the restrictions of the arena and directly interfered with the battle in the arena. Endless power poured down in front of Yi Tianjun and turned into a barrier to resist Chu Fengmian's power. Damn it! Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with killing intent. He never would have guessed that the person behind Yi Tianjun would disregard the rules and interfere with the martial arts assembly by breaking into the arena with brute force. The power had surpassed the life-shatterer realm. It was at least at the second step of the life and death steps, the immortality realm. What's going on? Someone is trying to save Yi Tianjun from the arena? Many martial artists outside the arena were taken aback. In the arena, life and death were determined by fate. This was a rule that no one had broken for thousands of years. But now, someone had broken the restrictions of the arena to save Yi Tianjun. Some of them looked at Chu Fengmian with pity. This was the best chance for Chu Fengmian to kill Yi Tianjun. As long as he killed Yi Tianjun, Chu Fengmian would be able to get all of Yi Tianjun's opportunities. He could then sweep across the northern region and ascend to the immortal realm. However, he did not expect to be hit in the head at the last moment. Chapter 695. You can't kill me, you little bastard. Yi Tianjun sneered when he saw the power breaking through the arena to save him. I've gained a lot from this battle. I'll take your life after I've overcome my tribulation. Yi Tianjun had the divine body of chaos, so he wasn't afraid of anyone. He was confident that he could defeat Chu Fengmian the next time as long as he could escape unscathed. Moreover, he was confident that he could escape unscathed this time. The expert behind him had already made his move and taken him away from the arena. I can't kill you. Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. He was determined to kill Yi Tianjun. No matter who came to save Yi Tianjun, he would die today. No one can save the person I want to kill. Chu Fengmian enunciated each and every word. Right at this moment, a power suddenly appeared above the 10,000 Jianwang sword. It was the power of fortune. Chu Fengmian didn't plan to use the power of fortune so openly. However, he didn't have time to think about that now that he wanted to kill Yi Tianjun. Die! Chu Fengmian said coldly. The bloodline of the battle dragon, the ancient dragon king body, and various forces in his body were fully unleashed. This caused the edge of the sword to become much sharper than before. What is Chu Fengmian trying to do? You want to kill Yi Tianjun by force from the hands of this expert? Everyone looked at Chu Fengmian in a frenzy. The person who came to save Yi Tianjun was strong enough to break the restriction of the arena. He was definitely an old antique who had transcended life and death. He was a true expert. Yet, Chu Fengmian dared to ignore this expert and try to kill Yi Tianjun at this time. This was simply a provocation to a supreme expert. Even a lunatic wouldn't do such a thing. Rumble. Outside the arena, deep in the void, another wave of spiritual energy blasted out and broke the restriction of the arena. This wave of spiritual energy turned into a sharp blade and slashed at Chu Fengmian. It was obvious that the expert who had protected Yi Tianjun was furious. With his status, he was protecting Yi Tianjun, but Chu Fengmian didn't care at all. He even planned to kill Yi Tianjun. This was simply a provocation to his dignity. This saber was the result of this immoral realm expert's fury. Being locked on by the blade, Chu Fengmian felt a supreme killing intent, as if it wanted to kill him directly. In fact, it was a power that surpassed the life-saving shatterer level. Not to mention a martial artist in the divine power realm, even those life and death realm geniuses or merciless tyrant might not be able to withstand this strike. The blade slashed down. The person behind Yi Tianjun was completely infuriated. Not only did he want to break the rules to save Yi Tianjun, he even wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. In this arena, Chu Fengmian had no way to escape. If he wanted to resist this blade, he had to use all his strength to escape. However, this would also give Yi Tianjun a chance to escape. Chu Fengmian had spent so much effort to force Yi Tianjun into such a desperate situation. Chu Fengmian couldn't accept letting Yi Tianjun go. Chu Fengmian's figure moved. Facing the incoming blade, he didn't dodge. Instead, he activated the power of the blade again and slashed at Yi Tianjun with the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword in his hand. What is Chu Fengmian doing? Is he crazy? Is he going to perish together with Yi Tianjun? Countless people were shocked to see Chu Fengmian's action. At this time, Chu Fengmian didn't choose to escape, but to kill Yi Tianjun? Under this blade, anyone would choose to flee. Even if they knew that they were going to die, they would still choose to flee. Chu Fengmian's actions were definitely out of their expectations. In fact, it was the exact opposite of what they had expected. You want to kill me? Dream on. Yi Tianjun must die today. No one can save him. Chu Fengmian shouted coldly. He arrived in front of Yi Tianjun in an instant. The blade in his hand fell mercilessly. Hiss. The sword slashed at Yi Tianjun. Bam! The blade collided with the barrier set up by the big shot. With a crisp sound, the barrier was broken. At the same time, countless sword rays slashed at Yi Tianjun's body. His body was cut into pieces and turned into minced meat. With a wave of Chu Fengmian's hand, Yi Tianjun's essence blood was taken away by Chu Fengmian. All the power of Yi Tianjun's innate divine body and all the opportunities he had obtained were integrated into the essence blood. Chu Fengmian took away his essence blood, which was equivalent to taking away everything he had. Yi Tianjun's eyes were filled with disbelief. He couldn't believe that Chu Fengmian dared to kill him after the big shot had made his move. Die! From outside the battle ring, a huge die word came from the void. The big shot was furious when he saw Yi Tianjun being killed. His blade was already slashing at Chu Fengmian's body. The blade came from the depths of the void to the arena and penetrated countless restrictions. The power it left behind was still extremely terrifying. The closer Chu Fengmian was to him, the more he could feel how terrifying the power was. Experts who had surpassed the life and death realm and had reached the life-shatterer realm were all hidden old antiques in the northern region. Furthermore, the expert behind Heavenly Lord Nightfall was someone who had surpassed the life-saving demolishing level and reached the live forever level. His blade even tore the surrounding space apart. Countless cracks appeared on the arena. Under his blade, everything would be destroyed. The moment the blade fell, Chu Fengmian's mind was extremely clear. At this moment of life and death, he couldn't afford to be confused. He pushed the power of the ancient battle dragon body and the battle dragon bloodline to the extreme. Countless golden scales began to condense around Chu Fengmian. He wanted to use all his means to resist this attack. Boom! Chu Fengmian's body was instantly sent flying. His body began to shatter. The golden scales shattered, and Chu Fengmian's bones shattered. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels were all crushed by the blade. His body was about to be forcibly severed by this power. Undefeated battle dragon. The ancient battle dragon bloodline in Chu Fengmian's body was activated to the extreme. At the same time, the power of the creation tree branch followed Chu Fengmian's bloodline. Waves of vitality covered Chu Fengmian's body, causing Chu Fengmian's shattered flesh and blood to gradually reform. Chapter 696. Is he dead yet? This big shot is truly terrifying. He's trying to kill Chu Fengmian by breaking the restriction of the stage. The rules of the Martial Battle Conference don't restrict this big shot at all. Chu Fengmian is really crazy. He's trying to kill Yi Tianjun even under such circumstances. Yi Tianjun is already dead. Perhaps Chu Fengmian wants to fight to the death. How can he resist such a terrifying power? I'm afraid this kid will be smashed into dust, leaving nothing behind. The blade of the big shot behind Yi Tianjun caused the entire stage to become chaotic. Countless gazes were fixed on the stage. Everyone wanted to see what the result would be. Bam! All of a sudden, a figure was sent flying out of the arena. Seeing this scene, the scene became silent for a moment. Then, countless voices erupted. He's not dead? He actually survived under such a blade. Numerous gazes were fixed on the figure that flew out. This figure looked extremely miserable. His flesh was torn and his body was covered in blood. However, one could still recognize his appearance. It was Chu Fengmian. Although he appeared to be battered and exhausted, the moment everyone saw this figure, their hearts were like raging waves in a perilous situation. This was a big shot who had transcended life and death. He killed Chu Fengmian in anger. Yet, Chu Fengmian didn't die under such an attack. Not to mention being in a miserable state, even if he was only left with a single breath, it would be inconceivable. Moreover, although Chu Fengmian looked miserable, his strength was still there. He didn't suffer any serious injuries. This was simply inconceivable. This person, is he really human? This kind of blade, any demonic beast would be torn apart. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, who would believe it? A divine power realm martial artist was actually able to resist such a terrifying blade from a big shot who had transcended life and death. Not to mention a divine power realm martial artist, even a life and death realm martial artist wouldn't be able to do this. This was no longer human. Monster. Monster. If this person can survive, who in the entire northern region would be able to resist him? A martialist could not help but mumble to himself. Chu Fengmian already possessed such terrifying strength before passing through the life and death calamity. If he passed through the life and death calamity in the future, wouldn't he be able to kill great figures who transcended life and death? This idea was enough to be called crazy. But now, when everyone looked at Chu Fengmian, they all believed this. Damn it! In the void, the big shot who had attacked Chu Fengmian became even more enraged when he saw that Chu Fengmian hadn't died at the hands of Dao Feng. Even with his status, he was unable to kill a junior like this. This was simply a great humiliation. Boom! Another wave of powerful energy fluctuation appeared in the void. Another blade broke through the void and slashed towards Chu Fengmian. It seemed that he would not give up until he killed Chu Fengmian today. Stop! Just as the blade broke through the void, a massive arm suddenly appeared from the depths of the void and crushed the blade. Everyone knew that this was an expert from the Sky-Reaching Pavilion. This year's martial competition was held by the Sky-Reaching Pavilion. This big shot wanted to save Yi Tianjun, which was against the rules. Now that he failed to kill Chu Fengmian with one move, he attacked again. No matter how noble this big shot's identity was, the Sky-Reaching Pavilion couldn't tolerate this kind of provocation again and again. Finally, the expert from the Sky-Reaching Pavilion made his move. Su Qi, does the Sky-Reaching Pavilion want to become enemies with the Beimang Academy? The blade was blocked, and the big shot's voice came from the depths of the void. This person is a disciple of the Beimang Academy. How dare he kill a fellow disciple? He deserves death. What? Does the Sky-Reaching Pavilion really want to protect him and go against the Beimang Academy? The big shot's voice was overbearing. He wasn't afraid of breaking the rules of the martial competition. His voice was full of threats. Forefather Yimu, this is the martial competition. If you kill someone here, aren't you looking down on the Sky-Reaching Pavilion? The other voice in the void didn't back down either. The Sky-Reaching Pavilion doesn't care about the internal affairs of the Beimang Academy. But this is the Martial King City, not the Beimang Academy. Su Qi, the expert from the Sky-Reaching Pavilion, said coldly. This year's martial competition was held by the Sky-Reaching Pavilion. No matter what, they wouldn't let anyone interfere. Humph! Yimu snorted coldly after hearing Su Qi's words. His aura left immediately. He knew that he couldn't take advantage of the situation if he stayed, so he left immediately. Before he left, his killing intent still shrouded Chu Fengmian. Obviously, he didn't give up. Phew! Many people breathed a sigh of relief after Yimu's departure. If such an unruly patriarch were to really cause a ruckus, it was likely that the fish in the moat would be implicated, and no one present would have it easy. His departure allowed everyone present to heave a sigh of relief. Chu Fengmian is done for. He dared to kill Yi Tianjun. This kid is crazy. But he's already provoked some old ancestors. He'll be killed when he returns to the academy. I'm afraid he won't be the strongest in the northern region for long. All eyes were on Chu Fengmian. Some were regretful, while some were excited. Especially Chu Fengmian's opponents. Each and every one of them was incomparably excited. As long as Chu Fengmian died, they would have one less formidable opponent to suppress them. The champion of this year's martial competition belongs to young Master Chu. The sky-reaching pavilion elder walked down and looked at Chu Fengmian with a smile. I wonder if young Master Chu has any plans to join the sky-reaching pavilion? The sudden words of the old man from the sky-reaching pavilion stunned many of the people present. Then, their gazes involuntarily turned to Chu Fengmian. The sky-reaching pavilion actually threw an olive branch to Chu Fengmian at this time? Everyone was shocked at first, but then they understood that Chu Fengmian's talent was enough to be called the strongest in the northern region in 100 years. With such talent, as long as he was nurtured well, he would definitely be a figure that could dominate the northern region in the future. He might even have a place in the entire 9 regions. So what if Chu Fengmian provoked some old ancestors of the Northern Sea Academy? The sky-reaching pavilion wasn't inferior to the Northern Sea Academy. Their background was also very deep. If Chu Fengmian joined the sky-reaching pavilion, it wouldn't be so easy for Yimu to kill Chu Fengmian. This was definitely the best opportunity for Chu Fengmian. Chapter 697. Join Sky-Piercing Pavilion? Sky-Piercing Pavilion was different from other sections. They rarely accepted disciples, and most of their experts were consecrated. However, this didn't mean that joining Sky-Piercing Pavilion didn't have many benefits. On the contrary, with Sky-Piercing Pavilion's resources, joining them wasn't any worse than joining the 7 major sections. Sky-Piercing Pavilion suddenly invited Chu Fengmian to join at this time because of Yimu's threat. If Chu Fengmian returned to Beimang Academy, he would definitely face revenge. Joining Sky-Piercing Pavilion at this time was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But in the next moment, Chu Fengmian's reply stunned everyone present. Thank you for your kindness, Senior. Since I'm a disciple of Beimang Academy, I naturally have no plans to leave. Chu Fengmian said calmly. No one expected Chu Fengmian to refuse at this time. Now that Chu Fengmian had killed Yi Tianjun, it would be dangerous for him to return to the Beimang Academy. Now that the sky-reaching pavilion had extended an olive branch to him, it seemed to everyone that he didn't even need to think about it. But now, Chu Fengmian refused. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and Chu Fengmian refused it. Many onlookers thought Chu Fengmian was crazy to refuse Sky-Piercing Pavilion's invitation at this time. Between staying in the dangerous Beimang Academy and joining Sky-Piercing Pavilion and receiving protection, Chu Fengmian chose the first option. Hearing the discussions, Chu Fengmian's heart was extremely calm. He had his own choice. Now wasn't the right time to leave Beimang Academy. Oh? Sky-Piercing Pavilion's elder seemed a little surprised to hear Chu Fengmian's reply. He didn't expect Chu Fengmian to refuse. In his opinion, this was the best time to rope Chu Fengmian in. Chu Fengmian's refusal seemed to be a little unexpected. However, he wasn't angry. His face was extremely calm as he spoke. Since young Master Chu doesn't want to join now, we won't force you. Sky-Piercing Pavilion's door has always been open for young Master Chu. As long as young Master Chu is willing, you can join at any time. As he spoke, Sky-Piercing Pavilion's elder took out a jade token and handed it to Chu Fengmian. This is our Sky-Piercing Pavilion's identity token. As long as you have this jade token, you'll be treated as an honored guest in any Sky-Piercing Pavilion. If young Master Chu has any business, you can also come find us. Yes. Chu Fengmian nodded and received the jade token. Chu Fengmian didn't refuse the Sky-Reaching Pavilion's goodwill. the sky-reaching pavilion was extremely powerful in the northern region. It was a good thing to be on good terms with them. There is still a month before the opening of the returning ruined sky. All the top 10 fighters in the martial battle grand meeting will reach the returning ruined sky within a month. At that time, the people from the 7 large sects will arrange for the opening and entry. The elder from the sky-reaching pavilion said. Just like that, this year's martial competition fell into desolation. Chu Fengmian won first place, which surprised everyone. However, the strength that Chu Fengmian displayed was indeed worthy of being called the number 1 person of the younger generation in the northern region. From today onwards, Chu Fengmian's name would resound throughout the 9 regions. Countless cultivators left the martial emperor city. Too many things had happened in this martial arts conference. News of Yi Tianjuan's death, Buried Heaven's death, Chu Fengmian's rise in power, and the sudden appearance of the Patriarch of Night Herder. Many people wanted to spread the news as soon as possible. Let's go! Chu Fengmian glanced at Hanueli. Without making too much of a fuss, he turned into a beam of light and left. The number 1 person of the northern region. Today, the number 1 person of the northern region will die. A cold gaze was fixed on Chu Fengmian from the spectator stand. The cold gaze belonged to Merciless Tyrant. Strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Now that he's been injured by that old man Night Herder, it's the best chance to kill him. Following Chu Fengmian's escape light, Merciless Tyrant also turned into a beam of light and headed in Chu Fengmian's direction. Outside the Martial Emperor City. After leaving the Martial Emperor City, Chu Fengmian and Hanueli turned into a beam of light and entered the void, traversing through it. The speed of the light was extremely fast. However, not far behind them, another beam of light was hot on their trail. Merciless Tyrant seems to have caught up with us. What should we do? Hanueli could not help but ask nervously when he sensed the light behind him. Your current injury? Do you want me to distract him? Chu Fengmian had previously resisted the blade of Night Herder Patriarch. Now that he seemed to be seriously injured, he would definitely be at a disadvantage if he were to fight Merciless Tyrant. It's fine. I'll lure them into the depths of the void. It'll be easy for me to kill them. Chu Fengmian said coldly. There are many experts in the Martial Emperor City. It'll be easy to be stopped if you make a move there. As long as you bring them into the depths of the void, these ants will all die. Chu Fengmian's words were filled with killing intent. The moment he spoke, Chu Fengmian's injuries visibly healed. However, they soon reverted back to their original injured state. Did they want to take advantage of Chu Fengmian's injury to deal with him? Chu Fengmian had the bloodline of the War Dragon and the vitality of the Builder Tree branch. His injuries could be healed in an instant. However, Chu Fengmian deliberately did not recover. He wanted to see if anyone would come to court death. Merciless Tyrant really wanted to take advantage of Chu Fengmian's injury to kill him. Since that was the case, Chu Fengmian would play with them. After all, Merciless Tyrant was on Chu Fengmian's to-kill list. Chu Fengmian and Hanueli continued to escape in the void. They moved further and further away and began to fly into the depths of the void. You want to escape from my grasp? What a joke! Anyone who offends our Earth Demon sect can only die. Run, the more you run, the better. When the time comes, it will be your time of death. The innate divine body, the heaven-grade spirit artifact, all these things will belong to me. Merciless Tyrant looked at Chu Fengmian and Hanueli's escape light in front of him and sneered. His eyes were full of greed. Now that Chu Fengmian and Hanueli were both seriously injured, there was no better opportunity than this. If he killed Chu Fengmian and Hanueli and obtained their fortuitous encounters, even a martial artist with poor aptitude would be able to reach the top in a single bound, let alone Merciless Tyrant. Merciless Tyrant's escape light had been following behind. The moment he arrived at the depths of the void, Merciless Tyrant's body began to move. His body turned into a cloud of poisonous mist and suddenly moved faster than the escape light. He surrounded Chu Fengmian and Hanueli from all directions. Chapter 698. In the depths of the void, in an extremely secluded place. A cloud of poisonous fog suddenly appeared and shrouded Chu Fengmian and Hanueli. "Who's there?" Chu Fengmian asked coldly. Merciless Tyrant's figure slowly materialized in the poisonous fog. His face was full of viciousness. His greedy eyes swept over Chu Fengmian and Hanueli as if he was staring at two incomparably huge treasures. Merciless Tyrant looked at Chu Fengmian and laughed. "How dare you leave Martial Royal City and come to the depths of the void when you're injured? You're courting death. It's you?" Chu Fengmian looked at Merciless Tyrant with an extremely calm expression. However, under this calmness, Chu Fengmian's spiritual power fluctuations were extremely chaotic. Although he tried his best to hide it, it could not escape Merciless Tyrant's eyes. Chu Fengmian had previously withstood the bombardment of Patriarch Yimu. Yimu was a big shot in the immoral realm. Even if Chu Fengmian had escaped unscathed, he could not have recovered so quickly. The chaotic spiritual power on Chu Fengmian's body was the best proof. In Merciless Tyrant's eyes, Chu Fengmian's calmness was just a disguise. It was proof that he was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. "Boy, you've offended our Earth Demon sect, injured Cold-Faced Demon Monarch, and killed Buried Heaven. Do you really think you can escape from me?" Merciless Tyrant said with a sneer on his face. "You've been hiding in Martial Royal City and I might not have been able to do anything to you. But since you dared to come out, I'll kill you in the depths of the void today." "You dare kill me? I have Beimang Academy behind me. With my current status, Beimang Academy won't let you off if you kill me," Chu Fengmian said calmly. He looked extremely calm. "Beimang Academy won't delete it, will they? Boy, it seems like you don't know Yi Tianjuan's status in Beimang Academy." Merciless Tyrant suddenly burst into laughter. The corners of his lips curled into a mocking smile. "Since you're already a dead man, I'll let you be a ghost who understands everything. The Yi family behind Yi Tianjun is the most powerful force in the North Mang Academy. Yi Tianjun is a peerless genius nurtured by the Yi family. If you dare to kill him, you'll die when you return to the North Mang Academy. Even if I kill you, do you think the North Mang Academy will trouble me for a dead person?" Merciless Tyrant's face contorted into a ferocious expression. His eyes kept darting between Chu Fengmian and Hanueli. "Furthermore, in the depths of the void, if I kill you, no one will know. No one will know that I killed you. If you die today, you can only blame yourself for being too arrogant. People who are too arrogant will only end up dead." The moment Merciless Tyrant opened his mouth, the spiritual power in his body suddenly condensed. A vast miasma swept out, and within the miasma, two incomparably huge poisonous hands suddenly reached out and grabbed at Chu Fengmian. Each of the poisonous hands was dark green and contained hundreds of deadly poisons in the world. Even a terrifying figure who had transcended life and death would be in extreme danger if he came into contact with them. "If no one knows, that's good. Then I'll kill you and your people from the Earth Demon sect won't have any trouble." Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a sneer. The moment Merciless Tyrant made his move, Chu Fengmian also took a step forward. The ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword suddenly appeared in Chu Fengmian's hand, its blade shining brightly. Chu Fengmian swung the sword and slashed at the two poisonous hands. "Merciless Tyrant, do you really think you've got me today? Do you think I'm seriously injured and can't fight back? I'm just luring the snake out of its hole. Although it's a pity that I didn't manage to lure the Cold-Faced Demon King here, since you've delivered yourself to me, I'll kill you first." Chu Fengmian sneered. His aura rose steadily. In Merciless Tyrant's opinion, Chu Fengmian's depleted spiritual power had been completely replenished in an instant. The wounds on Chu Fengmian's body were all healed in the blink of an eye. The current Chu Fengmian seemed to be in the most perfect state. Merciless Tyrant had deliberately lured Chu Fengmian to deal with the Cold-Faced Demon King. The latter had escaped from the arena and obtained a place in the top 10. Merciless Tyrant could still enter the ultimate ruins without killing him. Chu Fengmian wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to kill him first, but he did not expect Merciless Tyrant to come alone from the Earth Demon sect. However, it did not matter. Even if Merciless Tyrant came, Chu Fengmian would still kill him. Merciless Tyrant was also one of the peerless geniuses cultivated by the Earth Demon sect. He had already gone to the ultimate ruins and must have obtained countless benefits. Killing him would also be of great benefit to Chu Fengmian. Break! Chu Fengmian unsheathed his sword. Sword light flashed and the two poisonous hands were directly cut off. Even the poisonous miasma was directly removed. The sharpness of the ancestral dragon supreme sword was enough to restrain countless poisonous creatures and disperse the poisonous miasma. You! Merciless Tyrant was shocked when he saw Chu Fengmian suddenly attack. He had been chasing Chu Fengmian all the way to kill him. He thought that now that Chu Fengmian was seriously injured, he could take advantage of the fact that Chu Fengmian was at his weakest to kill him. However, he did not expect Chu Fengmian to be faking his injuries. Now, it seemed that he was not injured at all. Impossible. How can your injuries be healed? Do you think you can scare me away like this? Even if your strength is still at its peak, so what? Even if you still have all your strength, I'll still kill you today. Merciless Tyrant snorted coldly and did not back down. Merciless Tyrant was also a genius who had made a name for himself in the last martial arts conference. He was only one step away from transcending life and death and stepping into the realm of life-shattering. Even if Chu Fengmian's current strength was somewhat beyond his expectations, he was not afraid at all. Thousand Poison Cauldron. Come out! Merciless Tyrant roared. A dark green cauldron suddenly appeared in his hand. The cauldron emitted poisonous miasma. It was unknown how many kinds of poisonous creatures it had refined to reach such a level. Although this cauldron had not yet reached the heaven grade, it was infinitely close to being a heaven grade spiritual weapon. The power on it was extremely ancient. An ancient spiritual weapon that was tens of thousands of years old had already begun to evolve into a heaven grade spiritual weapon. In particular, the power on the Thousand Poison Cauldron was most suitable for Merciless Tyrant. In Merciless Tyrant's hands, the power of this Thousand Poison Cauldron was even more terrifying than a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. Chapter 699. Merciless Tyrant's aura skyrocketed with the appearance of the Cauldron of Myriad Poison. The Cauldron of Myriad Poison was an ancient poisonous weapon. In Merciless Tyrant's hands, it could unleash its most terrifying power. The poisonous miasma around him was 10 times stronger than before. An ancient spiritual weapon. Chu Fengmian saw the Cauldron of Myriad Poison and immediately recognized its antiquity. For example, although these ancient spiritual weapons had not reached the heaven grade, their true power was even above that of a heaven grade spiritual weapon. Merciless Tyrant actually had such a treasure. It was extremely rare to find such a treasure in the entire northern region. It was very likely that Merciless Tyrant had obtained the Cauldron of Myriad Poison from the ultimate ruins. Kid, if you kill yourself now, you'll suffer less. Otherwise, I'll let you taste the pain of being bitten by 10,000 poisons. Merciless Tyrant looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. You probably don't know the pain of being bitten by 10,000 poisons. Even if you want to die, it'll be an extravagant wish. I won't let you die so quickly. You've had countless adventures in your body. I'll transform your dragon bloodline into the poison dragon bloodline. It'll be enough to improve my strength further. And you, Hanueli. I won't kill you as long as you're obedient and become my woman. I'll spare your life after I take away your innate strength. Merciless Tyrant laughed loudly as if victory was already in his grasp. You guys can choose for yourselves. Is that so? In front of me, your puny demonic skill is worse than an ant. Even those old antiques in Nine Demons City don't dare to be so presumptuous in front of me. You're just a little devil. Killing you is as easy as crushing an ant. Chu Fengmian looked at Merciless Tyrant and sneered. Arrogant. Chu Fengmian, let's see how arrogant you can be after I capture you. Merciless Tyrant roared and once again activated 2 huge poisonous hands to grab at Chu Fengmian. With the help of the Cauldron of Myriad Poison, the power of Merciless Tyrant's poisonous skill was 10 times stronger than before. The two poisonous hands were 100 meters long and looked extremely terrifying as they struck out in the air. The countless deadly poisons on it made anyone who saw it feel incomparably hideous. Slash. Chu Fengmian did not care. With a wave of his hand, the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword slashed at Merciless Tyrant again. When the sword was swung, countless spiritual energies flashed on the sword edge. Hiss. The sword's blade sword chi instantly filled the sky filled with sword chi. The sword chi seemed to be able to cut the surrounding void. Although Chu Fengmian's power hadn't changed during the martial arts conference, his 9-region swordsmanship had reached another level after watching countless geniuses fight. Even without the need for a sword art, the sword strike was already much more powerful than countless exquisite sword arts. Of the bloodline. Of the ancestral Dragon Supreme bloodline. Was of the ancestral Dragon Supreme. Of the ancestral Dragon Supreme bloodline, ancestral Dragon Supreme of ancestral Dragon Supreme bloodline. Boom! Was on myriad poison on, was of myriad poison Dragon Supreme times. Was the Lord. Had. Countless cracks appeared on the restrictive formation on the cauldron of myriad poison. It seemed that it could not withstand the ancestral Dragon Supreme sword's sharpness under Chu Fengmian's sword. The cauldron of myriad poison was indeed an ancient spiritual weapon. However, Chu Fengmian's ancestral Dragon Supreme sword was also an ancient spiritual weapon. Moreover, it was the supreme treasure of the Dragon Clan and ranked at the top of the heavenly spiritual weapons. Even the cauldron of myriad poison could not withstand the sharpness of the ancestral Dragon Supreme sword. What? Merciless Tyrant's body retreated continuously. He also felt the recoil from the cauldron of myriad poison. He had always been able to kill anyone in his way since he obtained the cauldron of myriad poison. However, in the face of Chu Fengmian's ancestral Dragon Supreme sword, his trump card, the cauldron of myriad poison, seemed so fragile. Merciless Tyrant was forced to retreat by Chu Fengmian. A sinister look appeared on his face. Advent of the Poison King. Merciless Tyrant raised the myriad poison cauldron high and shouted at the sky. Countless poisonous creatures appeared in the void, and drops of rain fell from the sky. Every drop of rain seemed colorless, but in fact, it contained the world's most potent poison. Every drop of rain contained a type of deadly poison. Even if a person could withstand 1 or 2 types of poison, it was still extremely terrifying when so many poisons fell together. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Puny poisonous creatures can't even get close to me. Chu Fengmian looked at the rain of poison with an extremely calm expression. A drop of golden dragon blood suddenly appeared in his palm. This drop of golden dragon blood burned wildly in Chu Fengmian's palm and turned into a golden flame. As Chu Fengmian waved his hand, the golden flame surrounded Chu Fengmian and Hanyu Li. The poisonous rain evaporated the moment it came close to the golden flame. Not a single drop could get close to Chu Fengmian. My poisonous rain should extinguish all flames. What kind of flame is this? Merciless Tyrant's expression changed drastically. This advent of the poison rain was almost his trump card. He used all his poison techniques but still could not get close to Chu Fengmian. Even those experts who had surpassed the life and death realm would have a hard time dealing with this poisonous rain. However, it was extremely fragile in front of Chu Fengmian's golden flame. Your poison techniques are too weak. You can't even break through my dragon flames. You still want to kill me? Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Merciless Tyrant. His palm blasted toward Merciless Tyrant. Merciless Tyrant saw Chu Fengmian's sudden attack and hurriedly channeled his spiritual power to form a barrier in front of him. However, this barrier was extremely fragile in front of Chu Fengmian's palm. With a thought, Chu Fengmian condensed the power in his palm into a sharp sword and pierced it. The barrier was instantly shattered. Merciless Tyrant was caught in the palm of Chu Fengmian's hand as if he could not resist at all. 10,000 Poison Cauldron. Merciless Tyrant was extremely flustered when he was caught in Chu Fengmian's palm. Under such circumstances, Chu Fengmian could easily kill Merciless Tyrant with a casual squeeze if he wanted to. Merciless Tyrant had no time to think. He immediately urged the 10,000 poison cauldron to collide with Chu Fengmian. He wanted to break free from Chu Fengmian's palm. Chu Fengmian's expression was calm. He watched the 10,000 poison cauldron come crashing toward him. With a wave of his hand, more than half of the cauldron's power was neutralized. It was caught in Chu Fengmian's hand. Chapter 700. The 10,000 poison cauldron was still struggling in Chu Fengmian's hands. However, Chu Fengmian's war dragon aura suppressed the 10,000 poison cauldron and suppressed it. Merciless Tyrant could no longer control the cauldron no matter how hard he tried. The 10,000 poison cauldron is a decent spiritual weapon that can be integrated into the Black Dark Sword formation. However, its Earth grade is still too low. In that case, I'll integrate your flesh and blood into it and completely upgrade the 10,000 poison cauldron. Chu Fengmian sized up the 10,000 poison cauldron and suddenly made his move. Merciless Tyrant's body was crushed by Chu Fengmian's grip. Ah! Merciless Tyrant's body exploded before he could even finish his shriek. Countless blood chi burst out in an instant. Merciless Tyrant's empty ring also exploded, and countless spiritual weapons flew out from it. All of them were Earth-grade spiritual weapons, and there were more than a dozen of them. These spiritual weapons all contained an ancient aura. Clearly, they were all ancient spiritual weapons. Many of them were not as powerful as the 10,000 poison cauldron. They were all spiritual weapons that were only one step away from becoming heaven-grade spiritual weapons. After tens of thousands of years, the power of these spiritual weapons had also begun to evolve. They were only one step away from being upgraded. Good. It seems that Merciless Tyrant has had a lot of adventures in the ultimate ruins. These spiritual weapons are enough to upgrade. I'll use Merciless Tyrant's flesh and blood to upgrade these spiritual weapons and integrate them into the Black Dark Sword formation. There was still a huge gap between a Heaven-grade spirit artifact and an Earth-grade spirit artifact. Now that an Earth-grade spirit artifact had been integrated into the Black Profound Sword formation, there was not much of an improvement. However, the benefits of integrating a Heaven-grade spirit artifact were equivalent to at least 100 Earth-grade spirit artifacts. Many of the spiritual weapons in Merciless Tyrant's empty ring could be upgraded, but some were still lacking. Chu Fengmian could use Merciless Tyrant's flesh and blood to make up for this deficiency. The power brought by the flesh and blood of a life and death realm expert was enough to upgrade these spiritual weapons. Rise! As Chu Fengmian's palm moved, the blood mist started to burn. At the same time, the spiritual weapons were all thrown into the flames under Chu Fengmian's control. The power of Merciless Tyrant's blood chi was completely devoured by these spiritual weapons. Among them, the most powerful cauldron of myriad poisons was the first to undergo a transformation. The restrictive formation on it suddenly shattered and was replaced with a brand new one. These restrictive formations were not set up by humans, but by the power of these spiritual weapons. They were similar to the formations on Chu Fengmian's body and the ancient Dragon King's body. They represented the power of the spiritual weapons. Bang! The moment the formation was completed, the 10,000 poison cauldron took on a new look and turned into a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. Although it was the lowest grade heaven-grade spiritual weapon, it was already in the heaven grade. The difference between it and an earth-grade spiritual weapon was like heaven and earth. Good! The more you upgrade them, the more benefits you'll get from fusing them into the Black Profound Sword formation. Chu Fengmian continued to observe. In the flames, another long saber was upgraded to the heaven grade. Then, another long spear was upgraded. Among the countless spiritual weapons, there were a total of 3 that had been upgraded to the heaven grade. Although the upgrade was forced by Chu Fengmian's power and was much inferior to a real heaven-grade spiritual weapon, it was enough. After upgrading these 3 spiritual weapons, Merciless Tyrant's strength in the flames was almost depleted. Merciless Tyrant's blood and chi could only upgrade these 3 spiritual weapons at most. This was also because these 3 spiritual weapons had been accumulated to the limit and were only missing an opportunity. If he really wanted to refine a heaven-grade spirit artifact, it would be many times more difficult than this. Sword. Chu Fengmian called out with his mind. The black profound sword formation suddenly appeared and surrounded all the spiritual weapons. With the activation of Chu Fengmian's spiritual power, the spiritual weapons shattered one after another and turned into particles that began to fuse into the black profound sword formation. After fusing with the innate jade scepter, the 100,000 spiritual swords in the black profound sword formation had all reached the profound grade. Now that these spiritual weapons had all fused into the formation, it was enough to upgrade the power of the black profound sword formation. Boom! 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 After devouring the particles of these spiritual weapons, countless spiritual swords were upgraded and became Earth-grade spiritual weapons. The sound of upgrading continued. Finally, when all the particles were devoured, 10,000 of the 100,000 spiritual swords had been upgraded to Earth-grade spiritual weapons. Although not all of them had been upgraded to Earth-grade spiritual weapons, this result made Chu Fengmian very happy. When the 100,000 spiritual swords were all profound-grade spiritual weapons, the sword formation was enough to trap an expert like Yi Tianjun. Although it could not kill him, it was enough to trap him. Now, Chu Fengmian estimated that if the black profound sword formation was used at full strength, at least Merciless Tyrant would not be able to escape. No one in the life and death realm could escape from it. Chu Fengmian was confident that he could even delay those big shots who had surpassed the life and death realm and life-shattering realm experts for a while. If the 100,000 spiritual swords were all Earth-grade spiritual weapons, then even experts who had surpassed the life and death realm would only die if they fell into the black profound sword formation. In the ancient times, the Upper Sword Sect, a colossus, had a mountain-guarding formation composed of 100,000 heaven-grade spiritual weapons. At that time, no one in the 9 regions could break it. Even the strongest experts in the 9 regions dared not say that they could break it. From this, one could see how terrifying it was. If Chu Fengmian could upgrade all of these 100,000 spiritual swords to heaven-grade spiritual weapons, it would be enough for him to walk unhindered in the 9 regions. He could even easily destroy the 7 great sections. However, this thought only flashed through Chu Fengmian's mind. Upgrading a heaven-grade spiritual weapon was an extremely difficult task. 100,000 heaven-grade spiritual swords were accumulated by the Upper Sword Sect over tens of thousands of years. Chu Fengmian was afraid that he would never be able to reach this point. However, even if these 100,000 spiritual swords were all upgraded to Earth-grade spiritual weapons, they would at least be enough to kill experts who had surpassed the life and death realm. The black profound sword formation could be considered a great help to Chu Fengmian. It was enough to help him deal with many experts. Han Yueli, who was standing beside Chu Fengmian, witnessed Merciless Tyrant being killed by Chu Fengmian with his own eyes. Even his flesh and blood were integrated into the spiritual weapon. He could not help but sigh. Chapter 701. Merciless Tyrant was a well-known figure in the entire northern region. The top 3 in the last martial arts competition had entered the returning ruined sky and gained a lot of benefits there. As long as such a character was given some time, it was almost certain that he would be able to cross the barrier of life and death and step onto the life and death steps to become a first-generation old ancestor. But now, he should not have provoked Chu Fengmian, which led to his death on the spot. Chu Fengmian, are we going back to Martial Royal City? Han Yueli asked Chu Fengmian. After some time, we can set off for the returning ruined sky. Han Yueli knew that Chu Fengmian took her away to lure Merciless Tyrant. Now that they had accomplished that, they naturally had to leave. However, there was still some time before the opening of the returning ruined sky. Where were the 2 of them going during this period of time? Returning to the Beimang Academy was the best choice, but now that Chu Fengmian had killed Yi Tianjun, returning to the academy was also dangerous. The Yi family behind Yi Tianjun was well hidden in the academy, but the academy was always under the shadow of the Yi family. Chu Fengmian would be in trouble if he returned to the academy. No, let's go back to the academy. Chu Fengmian thought for a moment and said, now that I've won first place in the martial competition, I've made a great contribution. Now that I've returned to the Northern Mang Academy, it's impossible for the Yi family to kill me. Otherwise, Yimu wouldn't have taken such a risk to kill me in the arena. Chu Fengmian said in a low voice. Yimu's choice to kill Chu Fengmian in the arena during the martial arts competition was an extremely risky move. Even if he was a patriarch of the longevity realm, it was impossible for him to ignore the pressure from the sky-reaching pavilion. If he could wait until Chu Fengmian returned to the academy, he would not have to bear so much pressure to kill Chu Fengmian. Now that Chu Fengmian had won first place in the martial arts competition, he had done a great service to the academy. The patriarch of the academy would not let Chu Fengmian die in the hands of the Yi family. Returning to the academy seemed dangerous, but in fact, it was the best step. Han Yueli nodded at Chu Fengmian's words, but she still reminded him. Okay, but be careful. Yimu dared to attack at the martial arts competition, so he may not be so obedient in the academy. Of course. Chu Fengmian said. Chu Fengmian had never let down his guard against enemies. Other than this reason, Chu Fengmian's advancement of the Black Profound Sword formation was also one of the reasons why he chose to return to the North Sea Academy. Although the Black Mysterious Sword formation couldn't truly contend against those ancient antiques that had transcended life and death, it wouldn't be a problem to delay them for a period of time. Once an unforeseen event occurred, Chu Fengmian would use the Black Profound Sword formation to stall for time and he would be able to escape unscathed. Let's go back now. Chu Fengmian's sword escape, Fengmian's 2 days day Fengmian Day 2 school was day academy. It wasn't a long journey, but it took 2 days. In these 2 days, Chu Fengmian used the power of his bloodline to heal Han Yueli's injuries. Han Yueli's injuries from buried heaven had also fully recovered. Within 2 days, 2 streaks of light had returned to the Beimang Academy. They did not stop along the way as they directly traversed through the void and entered the Beimang sacred region. In these 2 days, everything that happened in the martial arts competition began to spread in the northern region. Chu Fengmian's name was known and engraved in the hearts of all the martial artists in the northern region. Killing Yi Tianjun, defeating the cold-faced demon king, Feng Wuxin, and even surviving from the hands of Yimu's patriarch. Any one of these things was enough to shake the heavens and earth. Now, all of them had happened to Chu Fengmian. He was the number one of the younger generation in the northern region. No one dared to refute this title. Even the entire northern Mang sacred region was unprecedentedly lively. The northern Mang sacred region had not won first place in the martial arts competition for several years. Now that Chu Fengmian had won first place, everyone began to talk about it. Crack! In the northern Mang sacred region, the sky above suddenly split open, and 2 streaks of light suddenly flew into it. Who is it? Such fast streaks of light. Many disciples of the northern Mang sacred region raised their heads and looked over. They were extremely surprised. The speed of the streaks of light was too fast. Such speed, could it be Chu Fengmian? It must be Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli. Many people were surprised for a moment, then realized who the owner of the streaks of light was. Only Chu Fengmian could swagger back to the northern Mang sacred region from the outside at such speed. However, many disciples were surprised when they saw Chu Fengmian's streaks of light. Chu Fengmian dared to come back after killing Yi Tianjun? They had heard about the battle between Chu Fengmian and Yimu Patriarch. Originally, many of them thought that Chu Fengmian would hide outside for a while, or at least survive a life and death calamity before he chose to come back. They did not expect Chu Fengmian to come back without caring about anything, as if he did not care about Yimu Patriarch's threat. On a mountain peak in the northern Mang sacred region, there was a huge palace. A white-haired old man was sitting in a palace with his eyes closed as he cultivated. This white-haired old man looked very old, but the life force on his body was much more exuberant than that of a young man. It seemed like he had already regained his youth. This was obviously a person who had transcended life and death. In the northern Mang sacred region, he was a real antique, an old ancestor. All of a sudden, outside the palace, a figure rushed in from the outside. Yimu Patriarch, Chu Fengmian has returned to the academy. This figure was one of the core disciples of the sacred faction, Shiji. Shiji had also obtained a top 10 ranking in the martial competition. Now, he had returned to the northern Mang sacred region. When he saw Chu Fengmian returning to the northern Mang sacred region, he quickly came to report. That little bastard, how dare he come back? Patriarch Night Herder's closed eyes abruptly opened. His eyes were filled with rage. I didn't kill him in the martial king city. Now that he dares to come back, I must kill him. Let's go. The Night Herder Patriarch stood up and broke the space, bringing Shiji with him as he stepped into the space. Chapter 702. Northern Mang Sacred Region. Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli swaggered back to northern Mang Sacred Region. The two of them did not stop. Instead, they flew straight to an enormous mountain at the center of Beimang Sacred Region. What are the two of them doing? Where is it? It's where the sacred faction is located. Yi Tianjuan's mountain, the Saint Mountain. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Chu Fengmian and his companion. Looking at the direction Chu Fengmian was flying in, they were all taken aback. Many people hurriedly chased after them. Everyone present understood in their hearts that the return of Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli would definitely not be so peaceful. Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli's escape light continued all the way until they arrived in front of an incomparably huge mountain peak before stopping. This mountain was bigger than the mountain where Chu Fengmian's master, the Xianbei Saint, resided. There were countless palaces built on it, and many venerables and disciples of the sacred faction were cultivating there. This mountain could be ranked in the top 3 in the northern Mang sacred region. The sacred faction used this mountain as their base. It was enough to show how invincible Yi Tianjun and the sacred faction were in the northern Mang sacred region. But now, with Yi Tianjun's death, the sacred faction should also disappear with him. Get out of here! Chu Fengmian stood in front of the Saint Mountain and suddenly shouted. His cold snort was loud enough for the entire northern Mang sacred region to hear. In the Chosen's Peak, numerous disciples walked out from the countless palaces within. Even the core disciples of the Saint faction were present among them. You're courting death. Who is it? How dare you cause trouble for our sacred faction? Get out of here if you don't want to die. Arrogant voices could be heard from the Saint Mountain. Chu Fengmian's face turned extremely cold when he heard those words. He suddenly waved his hand and condensed the ancient battle dragon bloodline, turning it into a huge battle dragon claw that descended from the sky. Boom! An incomparably loud roar resounded. The entire Saint Mountain was on the verge of collapse. Chu Fengmian's claw had shaken the entire Saint Mountain. The disciples of the Saint faction were infuriated. They flew out of the palace and saw the scene. Chu Fengmian's claw directly shattered the restrictions of the Saint Mountain. Chu Fengmian, what are you trying to do? This is the northern Mang sacred region, not a place where you can strut around. A ray of light suddenly flew out from the largest palace. It was Ningli, one of the core disciples of the Saint Party, who ranked 7th on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region. Chu Fengmian hadn't met Ningli at the martial competition, which allowed Ningli to return to the Beimang Academy alive. Otherwise, with Chu Fengmian's temperament, Ningli would have been killed by him. He glared at Chu Fengmian and shouted loudly. Get out of here quickly. Are you stupid? Our Saint Lord is already at death's door and you still dare to be arrogant. The higher management of the academy is already preparing to punish you. You still dare to come and cause trouble? Punish me? I've won first place in this year's martial competition and have made a great contribution. How can the academy punish me? But you disciples of the Saint Party are arrogant and despotic in the Beimang Academy and have caused a lot of trouble. Now that Yi Tianjun is dead, no one can protect you. Chu Fengmian stood high above, looking down at the people below like a true god. Get out of here. Anyone who doesn't get out of here in 3 seconds will die. Arrogant. Ning Li's expression changed when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. A long saber suddenly appeared in his hand and he directly slashed at Chu Fengmian. You're just an ant. How dare you attack me? Chu Fengmian looked calm. Looking at Ning Li's saber light, he slowly raised his hand and directly pinched it. Ning Li's saber was pinched in Chu Fengmian's hand. This saber couldn't even cut through Chu Fengmian's skin. As Chu Fengmian exerted a little force, the saber in Ning Li's hand directly shattered. This is the Beimang Academy. I won't kill you. But since you've offended me, I'll take half of your essence blood as compensation. Chu Fengmian clapped his hand and Ning Li's body was directly slapped away. At the same time, a wound appeared on Ning Li's chest. A large amount of essence blood was directly extracted by Chu Fengmian through the wound and integrated into the sword formation. Ning Li, who had extracted half of his essence blood, directly lost his strength and fell from the sky. What a ruthless move. He's going to take revenge on the Saint Party after returning to the academy. The disciples of the Beimang Academy were extremely shocked by Chu Fengmian's move. Ning Li was ranked 7th on the list of top 100 talents in the northern region. He was a peerless genius in the Beimang sacred region. But now, he was defeated by Chu Fengmian with just a wave of his hand. With half of his essence blood extracted, it would be impossible for Ning Li to recover his current strength if he did not have any amazing fortuitous encounters in the future. It would be even more impossible for him to break through in the future. It could be said that he had become a cripple. Seeing Ning Li being easily sent flying, the disciples of the Saint Party on the Saint Mountain all turned pale and turned into streaks of light, flying away. They did not want to end up like Ning Li. The streaks of light left one after another. The entire Saint Mountain was deserted. The Saint Mountain, which used to be the most prosperous place in the Beimang Academy, was now in such a state. Many disciples of the Beimang Academy were clear about this. The Saint Party was finished. The Saint Party, which used to dominate the Beimang Academy, was now completely finished in the hands of Chu Fengmian. At least they know what's good for them. Chu Fengmian sneered when he saw that there was no one left in the Saint Mountain. All the disciples of the Saint Party had fled. Chu Fengmian was not interested in killing these disciples of the Saint Party. They were just some small fries who could not arouse Chu Fengmian's interest. Chu Fengmian moved and turned into a streak of light, entering the Saint Mountain with Hanyu Li. The spiritual qi in the Saint Mountain was considered the best in the Beimang sacred region. It happened to be the best cave residence for Chu Fengmian. From today onwards, the Saint Mountain will be renamed Sword Comprehension Peak. It's my cave residence. No one is allowed to come near. Chu Fengmian entered the Saint Mountain and immediately set up countless restrictions, making the Saint Mountain look brand new. No, it was no longer the Saint Mountain, but Sword Comprehension Peak that belonged to Chu Fengmian. Chapter 703. The news of Chu Fengmian occupying the Saint Mountain spread across the entire northern Mang sacred region in an instant. The Saint Mountain was the base of the Saint faction. Now that Chu Fengmian occupied the Saint Mountain, it was enough to represent the destruction of the Saint faction. The qi on this mountain is incredibly dense. I can set up a formation to gather the qi here, and place a heaven-devouring godly python inside. It should be able to produce a huge amount of qi stones every day as a fortune. Chu Fengmian felt the spiritual energy in the Sword Comprehension Peak and waved his hand. An incomparably huge array was suddenly enveloped within it, and all of the spiritual energy was gathered at a single point. Then, the sword will on Chu Fengmian's body condensed. With a point of his finger, a wisp of sword will split out. This wisp of sword will turn into a heaven-devouring divine python, devouring the spiritual qi in the air. It kept devouring the spiritual energy until it reached a critical point. It was enough to spit out a spiritual stone. It was enough to bring Chu Fengmian endless wealth. The Saint Mountain was once enough to support the entire Saint faction. Countless disciples cultivated there, so it was self-evident how rich the spiritual energy was. Now that it was occupied by Chu Fengmian alone, it was enough for him to gain a lot of benefits. Now that Chu Fengmian had the Blood Sea, although he had a lot of wealth, he had not yet passed the life and death crisis. Once he passed the life and death crisis, Chu Fengmian would need an endless supply of spiritual energy to support his realm. The wealth in the Blood Sea might not be enough, so Chu Fengmian must continue to accumulate wealth. Boom! Just as Chu Fengmian finished setting up everything, a huge roar suddenly erupted. The seal on the Sword Comprehension Peak was broken, and the entire Sword Comprehension Peak was trembling. Two figures suddenly appeared in the void and shook the entire Sword Comprehension Peak. The one who attacked was a white-haired old man. He was the Immortal Realm expert who almost killed Chu Fengmian during the martial competition, Yimu Ancestor. Little bastard, how dare you come back after committing such a sin? Yimu Ancestor looked at Chu Fengmian, and the anger in his heart was unbearable. You massacred your fellow disciples. You've gone mad. You're already a monster. Now that you've returned to the Institute, I'll kill you and rid the Institute of a scourge. Without any hesitation, a long cyan saber appeared in his hand. He swung it at Chu Fengmian. Yimu's old ancestor had used his blade to attack Chu Fengmian during the martial competition. However, at that time, the saber had pierced through countless voids and broken through the restrictions on the stage. The remaining power was less than half. This time, Patriarch Nighthurter struck directly in the middle of Beimang's sacred region. The power he gathered was terrifying to the extreme. If the power of the saber fell directly, it would be enough to destroy the Sword Comprehension Peak under Chu Fengmian's feet. Stop! At this moment, the space in the sky was torn apart again. Those who could tear space in Beimang's sacred region were at least old ancestors who had surpassed the life and death realm. The appearance of Nighthurter Old Ancestor was already shocking enough. No one expected that another old ancestor would make a move at this moment. The old man tore the space apart and sent a wave of spiritual energy flying toward Chu Fengmian. However, this wave of spiritual power wasn't meant to attack Chu Fengmian. Instead, it turned into a barrier in front of Chu Fengmian and blocked the old ancestor's attack. Master? Chu Fengmian looked at the sky and said softly. At this moment, the only one who could save Chu Fengmian was Xianbei Saint. When Chu Fengmian returned to Beimang Academy, his every move was watched by countless people. Now that Nighthurter Old Ancestor had made a move against Chu Fengmian, Xianbei Saint also made a move. Nighthurter, what do you mean by attacking my disciple? Xianbei Saint appeared in the void and looked at Nighthurter Old Ancestor with a cold face. Xianbei, your disciple killed our people. Are you not going to give us an explanation? Nighthurter Old Ancestor looked at Xianbei Saint and roared with a sharp voice. This kid must die today. Only then can we pay for his sins and appease the anger of Yi family. The fury of the Yi family is not something that you can bear. Hurry up and hand over this little bastard. Nighthurter Old Ancestor was extremely arrogant as he roared. His strength wasn't as strong as Xianbei Saint, but he had Yi family behind him. They were the most powerful force in Beimang Academy. He dared to kill Chu Fengmian because he knew that Chu Fengmian's master was Xianbei Saint. I already know about Yi Tianjun. He died in the arena during the martial competition. His life and death are up to fate. However, Yi family has lost a genius after all. How about this? I'll give Yi family some compensation and we'll let this matter pass. Xianbei Saint looked at Nighthurter Old Ancestor and said calmly. Compensation? Today, I want this little bastard to die. Other than that, there's no other way. Nighthurter Old Ancestor shouted. Is that so? Since that's the case, I want to see if you can kill my disciple today. Xianbei Saint didn't back down. He had already taken a step back. Since Nighthurter Old Ancestor didn't agree, then he wouldn't take another step back. He was an old ancestor who had transcended life and death. Although Yi family was powerful in Beimang Academy, Xianbei Saint wasn't afraid of them. You! Hearing Xianbei Saint's words, Nighthurter Old Ancestor's eyes flashed with killing intent. He was even thinking about how to attack Chu Fengmian under Xianbei Saint's protection. The entire Beimang sacred region was in silence. The two old ancestors who had transcended life and death were fighting against each other. Many disciples didn't dare to make a sound. The disciples of Beimang's sacred region were at least seed disciples. However, these people were just ants in front of these old ancestors. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly, fearing that they would trigger Night Herd or old ancestors' anger. Just as the battle was about to break out, in the sky, another crack suddenly appeared on the ground. Countless pairs of eyes immediately looked over. At this moment, a third old ancestor appeared. Such an old ancestor who had transcended life and death was originally an old ancestor of Beimang Academy. They were usually legendary figures and almost never appeared. But now, they were appearing one after another. Yimu, Xianbei, both of you stop. An imperious voice could be heard coming from the crack. Chapter 704. The pressure contained in the voice was obviously emitted by a great figure who had been in a high position for a long time. As the voice came, the crack suddenly expanded, and a figure slowly walked out. It was a middle-aged man with a sword at his waist. His eyes were like torches. Chu Fengmian could feel the sharp sword intent hidden in this person. Although the middle-aged man looked like an ordinary martialist, he was definitely a sword cultivator who couldn't be underestimated. He might even be an extremely powerful sword cultivator. His sword intent had merely calmed down and looked normal. But once he drew his sword, the sword intent in his body would be completely stimulated. It was completely different from the current appearance. This is one of the vice principals of our Beimang Academy, a real big shot, Yi Zongxing. Han Yueli said softly. He is also a member of the Yi family. Be careful. Yi Zongxing? Chu Fengmian looked at the vice principal named Yi Zongxing. Many vice deans of the North Mang Academy were characters that surpassed their ancestors. For example, Yi Zongxing was stronger than Yimu forefather. But compared to Saint Xianbei, he was still inferior. Chu Fengmian couldn't see Saint Xuanbei's realm, but he was at least a figure who had walked far on the life and death steps. Chu Fengmian looked at Yi Zongxing, and Yi Zongxing's eyes also looked at Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, Yi Zongxing's eyes changed abruptly. His eyes were like a sharp sword, directly piercing towards Chu Fengmian. His eyes turned into a sword. This was something that could only be achieved when one had reached a high level of attainment in Sword Dao. This sword seemed to be a test, but it also contained killing intent. If Chu Fengmian couldn't resist it, he would probably be killed directly. Want to deal with me? No one can defeat me in Sword Dao. Facing the sharp sword, Chu Fengmian sneered in his heart, and the sword intent in his body was directly activated. Chu Fengmian's eyes also turned into a sharp sword. The two collided, and Yi Zongxing's sword intent was firmly suppressed by Chu Fengmian. In the next moment, his spiritual sword was directly shattered. The power of the backlash forced Yi Zongxing back several steps. Although it couldn't injure him, this outcome seemed to be beyond Yi Zongxing's expectation. What a powerful Sword Dao! This kid's Sword Dao is even stronger than mine? How is that possible? Yi Zongxing was filled with disbelief. One must know that he was the vice headmaster of the Beimang Academy, an ancestor-like character. On the other hand, Chu Fengmian was only a disciple at the Divine Force realm. There should have been no suspense in such a sword confrontation. His original plan was to kill Chu Fengmian while Xianbei Saint was not paying attention. However, he did not expect that he would actually lose in a clash of Sword Dao. The Heavenly Monarch did not die in the hands of this person. Yi Zongxing looked at Chu Fengmian and thought to himself. Yi Tianjun was a genius that the Yi clan had focused on nurturing. In the entire northern region, he was invincible in the same realm. Now that he had died at Chu Fengmian's hands, the Yi clan was in an uproar. No one seemed to have expected this. However, Yi Zongxing clearly understood Chu Fengmian's strength after this confrontation. At least in terms of Sword Dao, Chu Fengmian's attainment was unfathomable. If I don't kill this kid, he will become a great threat. Yi Zongxing's killing intent surged. He could not wait to kill Chu Fengmian. However, when he thought of the Academy's arrangements before he came, he could only suppress his killing intent. Vice Headmaster. Xianbei Saint said coldly when he saw Yi Zongxing coming. May I know why you are here, Vice Headmaster? It's nothing. Your disciple, Chu Fengmian, performed outstandingly in this martial competition and won glory for our Northern Mang Academy. This time, the Academy sent me here to represent the Academy and give him a reward as a reward. Yi Zongxing said calmly. The higher-ups of the Beimang Academy naturally knew about the martial arts competition. As the vice headmaster, he came here on behalf of the Beimang Academy. Give him a reward? A reward? Yimu's ancestor suddenly said when he heard Yi Zongxing's words. Zongxing, this person killed our disciple. Today, we must kill him. How can we give him a reward? Yi Tianjun was the grandson of Yimu's ancestor. Yimu's ancestor hated Chu Fengmian to the core. He could not wait to tear Chu Fengmian to shreds. When he heard that Yi Zongxing wanted a reward, he hurriedly said. Yimu, this is the decision of the Academy's higher-ups. Moreover, Tianjun died in the arena during the martial arts competition. No one can blame him. Yi Zongxing looked at Yimu and shook his head. Everything depends on the Academy's decision. Yi Zongxing said and looked at Chu Fengmian. A golden dragon pill suddenly appeared in his hand and flew directly to Chu Fengmian. This is the Academy's reward. It represents your contribution to the Academy. In the returning ruined sky, you will continue to gain countless benefits and make the Beimang Academy famous. Yi Zongxing ignored Chu Fengmian and said to Xianbei Saint. Xianbei, Yimu was reckless this time. Yimu, let's go. Yi Zongxing and Yimu's ancestor entered a crack and disappeared from the Beimang sacred region. This dragon pill? Good stuff. Chu Fengmian waited for Yi Zongxing and Yimu's ancestor to leave and finally felt relieved. It was just as he had guessed. This time, Chu Fengmian won first place in the Beimang Academy and made a name for himself in the northern region. Not only would the Beimang Academy not kill Chu Fengmian, but they would also reward him. Chu Fengmian glanced at the dragon pill and knew its value. It was at least the dragon pill of a true dragon, and at least the dragon pill of a dragon king. Any true dragon was an existence that could call the wind and summon the rain in the 9 regions. They could cause huge waves. The Dragon King was the king of all dragons. A Dragon King was equivalent to an expert that transcended life and death. When the dragon pill was alive, the Dragon King's strength was not weaker than Xianbei Saint. His dragon pill was simply priceless. This dragon pill was simply the best treasure in the world. It was something that could only be found by chance. Especially since Chu Fengmian cultivated the battle dragon formula. This dragon pill was definitely the greatest treasure for him. It was more useful than anything else. This dragon pill would be of great use when Chu Fengmian faced the life and death tribulation. Chu Fengmian observed it for a while before he waved his hand and kept the dragon pill. Then, he returned to Sword Comprehension Peak. Han Yueli and Saint Xianbei also entered Sword Comprehension Peak together with him. Chapter 705. The people from the Yi clan actually left just like that? Yi Zongxing actually brought a reward. The dragon pill is a priceless treasure. How could they just give it to Chu Fengmian? It seems like the higher-ups don't want to deal with Chu Fengmian. After all, a genius like him rising in our Beimang Academy will benefit us greatly. When the seed disciples saw what was happening, they all had their own thoughts in their hearts. Some of the seed disciples wanted to rely on Chu Fengmian. Yi Tianjuan's death and the Academy's reaction meant that Chu Fengmian was going to become the new #1 in the Beimang Academy. Many of them were thinking about how to rely on Chu Fengmian. In the depths of the void, 2 rays of light were moving at extreme speed. They were Yi Zongxing and Yimu's ancestor. The fury on Yi Herder's face hadn't dissipated for a long time. He looked at Yi Zongxing with dissatisfaction. Is the master just going to watch this kid show off? He killed our people and nurtured them? Yimu's ancestor said coldly. Those old fogies in the academy, are they tired of living? How dare they go against our Yi clan? Yi Mu, calm down. This arrangement was made by the master himself. Yi Zhongxing said calmly after hearing Yi Mu's words. The master already has a plan in mind. Chu Fengmian has great luck on him. I've tested him before. His sword Dao is definitely not something that someone of his age can cultivate. It's very likely that he has had many fortuitous encounters that we don't know about. With his luck, he'll be able to obtain countless benefits in this trip to the returning ruins heaven. The master's plan is to use his luck to obtain countless treasures from the returning ruins sky. By then, all of his fortuitous encounters will belong to our Yi clan. Yi Zhongxing also revealed a bit of killing intent. How can we let you off so easily after killing a member of our Yi clan? As the two of them conversed, their figures gradually disappeared into the void. On the other side, on the sword comprehension peak, Chu Fengmian, Han Yueli, and Xianbei Saint were seated at a stone table and chatting. In this martial competition, I originally thought that you would only be able to enter the top 10 and obtain a spot. I didn't expect that you would actually obtain the first place. Xianbei Saint looked at Chu Fengmian. He could also feel that Chu Fengmian's aura seemed to have changed. Chu Fengmian's cultivation level hadn't changed at all. However, he had witnessed the sword techniques of countless geniuses at the martial battle conference, which had allowed his 9-realm sword technique to gain a deeper understanding and improve gradually. His realm hadn't changed, but Chu Fengmian's current strength was indeed completely different from the last time he left the Northern Sea Academy. This change in strength was also reflected in Chu Fengmian's aura. However, Saint Xianbei didn't ask about it. Every venerable warrior had his or her own secrets. Chu Fengmian had many secrets, but he didn't intend to ask. You've caused quite a bit of trouble by killing Yi Tianjun. I forgot to remind you that the Yi clan behind Yi Tianjun isn't easy to deal with. Saint Xianbei said. When he mentioned the Yi clan, his face became extremely solemn. With his strength, he was an expert among the countless patriarchs in the Northern Sea Academy, but he was also extremely wary of the Yi clan. Saint Xianbei reminded him. This time you killed Yi Tianjun, the Yi clan definitely won't let you go. This time, you killed Yi Tianjun in the martial battle conference and obtained the first place. This is considered a great contribution to the academy. Therefore, the Yi clan won't kill you now, but they definitely won't give up on killing you. You have to be careful. Okay. Chu Fengmian nodded. Chu Fengmian naturally understood what Saint Xianbei meant. This time, although it seemed that the academy didn't blame Chu Fengmian and even gave him a reward. But Chu Fengmian knew that this was just a show. Chu Fengmian obtained the first place in the martial battle conference, which was a great contribution to the Northern Sea Academy. Killing Chu Fengmian now was equivalent to killing a meritorious person. If Chu Fengmian was killed now, it would definitely cause a great reaction. Therefore, the Yi clan didn't dare to kill Chu Fengmian. It was because of this that Chu Fengmian dared to swagger back to the Northern Sea Academy. Even if Saint Xianbei didn't take action just now, Yi Zhongxing would have taken action to stop Yi Mu ancestor. However, the Yi clan would never let Chu Fengmian go. They let Chu Fengmian go this time, but next time, the Yi clan would be serious. You'll be in great danger if you stay in the Northern Sea Academy. Saint Xianbei thought for a while and said. With your current talent, no matter which force you go to, even the 7 great sects will protect you. Why don't you leave the Northern Sea Academy and avoid the Yi clan's pursuit? No, I won't leave. Chu Fengmian shook his head. Now that the academy has just bestowed the reward, if I were to leave now, it would give the Yi clan a reason. When the time comes, they would have a reason to kill me. So what if they're from the Yi clan? I'm going to the returning ruins sky this time to pass the tribulation of life and death. As long as I pass the tribulation, what can the Yi clan do? Yi Mu ancestor? Yi Zhongxing? If I can kill them all, the Yi clan will have to think twice before coming after me. Chu Fengmian said confidently. To pass the tribulation of life and death, one had to kill the old antiques who transcended life and death. If other cultivators had said this, Saint Xianbei would have thought they were out of their minds. Even the most arrogant of geniuses wouldn't dare say such words. But now, Saint Xianbei believed Chu Fengmian's words. When Chu Fengmian went to Martial King City to participate in the Martial Battle Conference, he thought he'd at most enter the top 10 and win a spot in the returning ruined sky. But now, Chu Fengmian had taken first place and even killed Yi Tianjun. Back in the Martial Battle Conference, Chu Fengmian had withstood Yi Mu Ancestor's blade. As long as Chu Fengmian passed the tribulation of life and death, perhaps his strength would really reach the level where he could contend with these ancestors. Saint Xianbei didn't intend to say anything after hearing Chu Fengmian's confidence. If one wanted to become a powerhouse, they naturally couldn't run away in the face of danger. Only with such a personality could one become a true powerhouse. Gods and Buddhas would kill anyone who stood in their way. Chapter 706. There are countless opportunities in the returning ruined sky, but it's also very dangerous. It's easy if it's for some small adventures, but the real big adventures are also very dangerous. Xianbei Saint nodded and said, "In the returning ruined sky, there are not only warriors from the northern region, there are also geniuses from the other 8 regions. Our northern region can only be considered as below average among the 9 regions. The geniuses from the central region and heaven region are the truly terrifying ones. When I was young, I toured the 9 regions. The geniuses of the northern region can't be compared to the real geniuses of the 7 sections. Even Yi Tianjun is only a slightly famous genius among the 7 sects, but he can't be specially trained by the 7 sections. So, you have to be careful when you go to the returning ruined sky." "Okay." Chu Fengmian nodded. He could tell that Xianbei Saint was reminding him. Chu Fengmian was invincible among the younger generation in the northern region. Therefore, Xianbei Saint was reminding him to avoid causing trouble in the returning ruined sky. However, Chu Fengmian naturally knew what Xianbei Saint was talking about. 10,000 years ago, Chu Fengmian had set foot in most of the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian's understanding of the 7 sects was also far better than ordinary warriors. The more he knew about the 7 sects, the more he knew how powerful they were. Xianbei Saint wasn't exaggerating at all. Yi Tianjun could only be considered outstanding among the 7 sects, but he wasn't invincible. The true geniuses of the 7 sects were definitely stronger than Yi Tianjun. Even Chu Fengmian wasn't confident that he could defeat them. However, Chu Fengmian had already reached the peak of the same realm. He wasn't inferior to anyone. No matter how monstrous a genius was, Chu Fengmian didn't necessarily think that he couldn't defeat them. The opening of the returning ruined sky this time was enough to attract all the geniuses of the 9 regions. They had to go through countless competitions to obtain the treasures inside. Chu Fengmian was looking forward to it. Only by exchanging blows with countless geniuses would his strength be able to improve. Xianbei Saint chatted with Chu Fengmian for a while more before leaving. On the other side, Han Yueli also went to find Elder Bingli and had a few words with her. Half a day later, Han Yueli returned to Sword Comprehension Peak. "It's a long journey to Sinkhole Heaven. We should hurry." Chu Fengmian looked at Han Yueli and said. 2 streaks of light left the northern Mang sacred region. The sinkhole sky was located in a unique space outside the 9 regions. However, the entrance to the sinkhole sky was located in the western region of the 9 regions. The western region was very similar to the northern region as a whole. However, the biggest power in the western region was the Empire of Destiny. The entire western region belonged to the Empire of Destiny. Although there were other factions in the western region, they were far from being able to compete with the En dynasty and could only hide in the shadows. The entrance to the returning ruined sky was on one of the borders of the Destiny dynasty in the western region. As long as one went there, the people from the 7 major sects would wait for the day when the space in the sinkhole sky was the weakest to open a passage for martial artists to enter. Therefore, the opening of the sinkhole sky was only one day, so one had to arrive early. If one missed it, they would have to wait for 3 years. Along the way, Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli kept talking about the sinkhole sky. Before leaving, Xianbei Saint told Chu Fengmian everything he knew. Xianbei Saint had been to the sinkhole sky when he was young, so he told Chu Fengmian a lot of things. The sinkhole sky was an extremely large area. Although it was not as large as the northern region, it was still much larger than countless countries. The entire sinkhole sky was actually the remains of an ancient sect. There seemed to be many sects that had once existed, but they had all been destroyed for unknown reasons. However, some of the cultivation techniques and elixirs of those sects had been left behind. Because the sinkhole sky was a completely sealed space, the cultivation techniques and elixirs had all been left intact and had become a treasure trove that contained countless treasures. Among them, countless treasures could be obtained at the drop of a hat. However, although there were countless treasures in the sinkhole sky, the dangers within were comparable to the countless perilous places in the 9 regions. The greatest danger was actually the demonic beasts that had been left behind by the sects to guard the mountains. The lifespan of the demonic beasts was much longer than that of martial artists. Therefore, although the sects had been destroyed, some of the demonic beasts had survived and thrived in the sinkhole sky. These demonic beasts had also relied on the countless treasures left behind by the sects to cultivate and grow stronger. They had already formed countless tribes and had become a demonic territory. Countless martial artists would enter the sinkhole sky and engage in fierce battles with the demonic beasts. In particular, the demonic beasts were also extremely eager to obtain the countless treasures in the sinkhole sky. Therefore, it was extremely dangerous to obtain any of the treasures in the sinkhole sky. In addition to the demonic beasts, there was another thing that was even more terrifying: the martial artists who entered the sinkhole sky with them. Entering the sinkhole sky was equivalent to entering a completely different space. Everything that happened in the sinkhole sky could not be calculated, even by the most powerful martial artists. Therefore, there was no need to hide the fact that one killed someone in the sinkhole sky. No one would know. Therefore, the sinkhole sky was almost enough to be called a lawless zone. It was extremely common for martial artists to kill each other after entering the sinkhole sky. It could be said that most of the martial artists who died in the sinkhole sky were not killed by the demonic beasts, but by other martial artists who had entered the sinkhole sky. It was much easier to directly plunder the wealth of others than to painstakingly fight the demonic beasts. There were even rumors that the martial artists of some sects in the sinkhole sky would band together and form small groups to plunder other martial artists and share the spoils. In the sinkhole sky, martial artists were even more dangerous than demonic beasts. Every martial artist in the 9 regions can only enter the sinkhole sky once. This is the only chance to obtain a fortuitous encounter in the sinkhole sky. The two of them were traveling through the northern region. Han Yueli said as she opened her mouth to speak. It is said that there is a cold zone in the sinkhole sky that is rich in ice attribute sacred herbs. It is the most suitable place for me. I entered the sinkhole sky to explore the cold zone. Chapter 707. There were countless wondrous lands in the sinkhole sky. It was said that one of them was extremely cold all year round, and it was enough to give birth to countless ice-based sacred herbs. For Han Yueli's profound cold body, it was the best place to cultivate. Of course, there were many places like this in the sinkhole sky. The sinkhole sky seemed to have gathered countless wondrous lands together to form a region. There are ruins of ancient sword sects in the ruins. If I can come across them and comprehend the sword principle, it will be of great use to my 9-region sword principle. Chu Fengmian also muttered to himself and directly opened his mouth. His 9-region sword principle was to connect the ancient times to the present. The sword principle of the ancient era was extremely mysterious, and it was perfect for Chu Fengmian to comprehend. As the two conversed, they had already arrived at Beimang City. There was a teleportation formation in Beimang City that led to the other 8 regions. Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli traversed through it. Even if they used the teleportation formation, they could reach a place thousands of miles away in an instant. The two of them tossed and and it took them more than 10 days to finally reach the western region. The 9 regions were vast and boundless. If Chu Fengmian wanted to traverse the northern region alone, he would need to fly. Even if Chu Fengmian had a divine pulse and endless spiritual power, it would still take him at least a few months. It would take him at least 10 days to use the teleportation formation. In the western region, the two of them used the teleportation formation again and finally arrived at the Sinkhole City. The Sinkhole City was the closest city to the Sinkhole Sky. It was because of the Sinkhole Sky that such a city was built around it. The city was very prosperous, but there were not many people. This was because most of the people who came here were going to enter the Sinkhole Sky. As for the others, they were not qualified to enter the Sinkhole Sky, so there was no point in coming here. There were only 100 spots for the Sinkhole Sky each time it opened, so there were not many people. At a glance, there were only a few dozen cave residences of various sizes in the Sinkhole City for warriors to rest in. There are still 10 days before the Sinkhole Sky opens. I have to find a place to rest first. Chu Fengmian calculated the time and looked at those caves. These cave dwellings were built to provide a place for the martialists who had entered the returning ruined sky to rest. During these 10 days, they would be able to find a cave dwelling and rest. With these thoughts in mind, Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli descended into the city. Stop! Who are you? In the Guishu city, a few martial artists suddenly appeared and surrounded Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli. One of the honorable martial artists said directly, "Outsiders are not allowed to enter Sinkhole City. Leave at once. We are martial artists of the North region. We have obtained the right to come to Sinkhole City and wait for the opening of Sinkhole Heaven." As Chu Fengmian spoke, he waved his hand. 2 command tokens flew out. So the two of you are geniuses who have come to participate in the ruins of End Heaven. The honorable martial artist took the identity token and glanced at it. His expression softened as he smiled. Sorry for offending you just now. Please don't take offense. Please come in. The honorable martial artist said as he led Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli into Sinkhole City. Chu Fengmian wasn't surprised by the sudden change in attitude. The martialists who could participate in the returning ruined sky were all geniuses of the 9 regions. Even the geniuses from the North region were far more outstanding than most ordinary people. Such geniuses were likely to become the overlords of the 9 regions in the future. Offending anyone was not a wise choice. Chu Fengmian naturally knew this and couldn't be bothered to fuss over it. Brother, how should I address you? Chu Fengmian looked at the honorable martial artist and suddenly asked. The martialist before him looked like a guard of Sinkhole Sky, but his strength had reached the advanced level of the life and death realm. In the West region, he was definitely a well-known figure. The West region was very similar to the North region. Although he couldn't be considered a patriarch, he was at least a big shot. Wang Hui, from the Yin dynasty. The martialist named Wang Hui calmly said. Wang Hui. Hearing this name, Chu Fengmian's mind turned carefully. After arriving in the West region, Chu Fengmian had learned some things about the West region from the conversations of many people. Duke of Prestige? Chu Fengmian said with some surprise. Chu Fengmian had heard of this name before. The Duke of Prestige in the Yin dynasty was precisely this name. Undeserved reputation is not worth mentioning. Wang Hui said with a smile. It seemed that the Yin dynasty also attached great importance to Sinkhole City. After all, those who came were all geniuses of the 9 regions and even the 7 great sects. Any one of these guards was a well-known figure in the West region. Brother Wang, I need a quiet cave abode with abundant spirit chi to rest. Please arrange it well. Chu Fengmian suddenly said. Without batting an eyelid, a spirit stone appeared in his hand and he directly handed it to Wang Hui. This is? Receiving the spirit stone, Wang Hui felt an extremely pure spiritual energy, which caused him to be slightly shocked. A royal grade spirit stone? The royal grade spirit stone was not something that belonged to this era. Ordinary martialists could not condense it at all. Only a few hidden big shots and old antiques could condense it. However, how many of these big shots and old antiques were willing to waste their time to condense the royal-grade spirit stone? Even in the 9 regions, the royal-grade spirit stone was enough to be regarded as a rare treasure that was worth a lot. What a big deal! Wang Hui accepted the royal-grade spirit stone without batting an eyelid. As guards in Sinkhole City, they were not allowed to ask for any benefits. It would be extremely troublesome if they were caught red-handed. However, the royal-grade spirit stone was indeed valuable, so it was enough for him to take the risk. Cave abode? That's easy. There's an empty cave abode in the upper 9 heavens in Sinkhole City. I'll take the 2 of you there. Wang Hui said with a smile. Geniuses like Chu Fengmian, who was calm and generous, made him extremely happy. Many geniuses in the 9 regions had extreme personalities. Some were arrogant, some were cold, and there were not many with a normal personality like Chu Fengmian. Wang Hui was willing to take care of him. Although the guards did not have a high status, they still had some authority, especially when it came to the allocation of cave abodes. Chapter 708. I've already reserved this upper 9 heavens cave. Wang Hui, you don't have to go. Suddenly, a voice sounded beside him. This voice was extremely arrogant, as if he didn't put Wang Hui in his eyes at all. Following the voice, a few cultivators suddenly walked out. The one in the lead seemed to be a middle-aged man, and behind him were a few young men. These young men didn't have high cultivation bases, but their auras were each more terrifying than the last. They were clearly geniuses who came to Sinkhole City to prepare to enter the Sinkhole Sky. Kaihan, it's you? Hearing this voice, Wang Hui's expression changed abruptly, becoming much colder. These 2 friends of mine have already reserved this cave. Then tell them to scram. Before Kaihan could speak, a young man behind him suddenly stood out. This young man stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes sweeping over Chu Fengmian and Hanueli with disdain. He didn't put the 2 in his eyes at all. This kind of arrogance was displayed to the fullest. However, this young man didn't lack the qualifications to be arrogant. His cultivation base was around the 2nd level of the life and death realm, but his spiritual energy was unfathomable. Compared to many peak life and death realm cultivators, his spiritual energy was much more robust. He was practically an invincible figure in the life and death realm. Who are you? Chu Fengmian looked at this young man and calmly asked. Since you've come to Sinkhole City, you shouldn't be nameless. There's no harm in telling you. We're disciples of the Southern Region's Black Sky sect. Since you know who we are, why don't you quickly retreat and give up this cave? We won't forget to reward you. This young man said arrogantly. The Southern Region could be considered as the middle of the 9 regions. Compared to the Northern and Western regions, it was a few times stronger. The Black Heaven sect was the largest sect in the Southern region. Although the Black Heaven sect was still slightly inferior to the 7 major sects in the entire 9 regions, its momentum in the past few years had brought it close to the 7 major sects. Therefore, these Black Sky sect disciples would only pay attention to the disciples of the 7 great sects. Apart from them, they didn't put anyone else in their eyes. People of the Black Sky sect? I've never heard of him. He's so arrogant. I thought he was from the 7 great sections. Chu Fengmian curled his lips and said coldly. Scram. I'm in a good mood today, so I don't want to teach you a lesson. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Wang Hui, who was standing beside Chu Fengmian, suddenly paled. The Southern region had always wanted to surpass the Northern region. Originally, when he heard that the young man was a disciple of the Profound Heaven sect, he wanted to retreat. He wanted to persuade Chu Fengmian to take a step back. He didn't expect Chu Fengmian to speak so arrogantly. The young man's face twitched uncontrollably when he heard this. The fury in his heart burst out in an instant. Arrogant brat, what big words! Are you looking down on the Black Heaven sect? The young man was shocked at first. Then, he took a step forward and stared at him. Kneel! Kneel down now, and I can spare your life. Hearing the young man's words, Chu Fengmian was speechless. This kind of arrogance was already an act of arrogance. Obviously, this young man was used to being awe-inspiring. This kind of arrogance seemed to be looking down on all living things, and he treated Chu Fengmian as an ant. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue with your words? Kneel down? Who do you think you are? Chu Fengmian's face turned cold as he said coldly. You're just a nobody. Do you really think you're the supreme of the 9 regions? Even the supreme of the 9 regions wouldn't dare to make me kneel down. Who do you think you are? Huh. Hearing this, not only the young man, but the other 2 people behind him also turned cold. One of them, a man with a hawk nose, said sarcastically. Senior Brother Mu, it seems that our Black Sky sect has been too low-key. How dare an ant challenge our dignity? Why don't we give him a lesson today and give those good-for-nothings a warning? An ant? You talk big, but you're just a good-for-nothing who can talk big. Chu Fengmian said coldly. These Black Sky sect disciples were each more arrogant than the other. There was no reason to reason with these people. If he didn't teach them a lesson, this matter wouldn't be resolved. Since that was the case, Chu Fengmian didn't want to waste any more words. Kneel down. Chu Fengmian directly clawed at the man with a hawk nose. Like the wind, he swept out. How dare a good-for-nothing like you attack? Go to hell. The man with a hawk nose shouted coldly and suddenly attacked. Just now, he had been accumulating spiritual energy, so he suddenly attacked with all his strength. He suddenly threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. With a single punch, the entire sky was filled with fist winds. There were tens of millions of them, making it impossible for anyone to dodge. 10 heavenly fists. This is one of the 10 heavenly fists, the heavenly fists. A punch is like a bombardment of stars. It's impossible to block. Wang Hui suddenly said when he saw the man with a hawk nose attack. Obviously, he had heard of the Black Sky sect's 10 heavenly fists. The 10 heavenly fists was one of the top martial techniques in the 9 regions. As long as one learned one of the moves, it was enough to dominate the 9 regions. Seeing the man with a hawk nose use one of the 10 heavenly fists, Wang Hui couldn't help but look at Chu Fengmian with a worried expression. This attack was indeed a bit too powerful. Even a peak life and death realm martial artist would be defeated by this punch. Although he wanted to stop it, with his strength, he couldn't get involved in a battle of this level. That is? Someone from the Black Sky sect? Someone from the Black Sky sect? Who did he have a conflict with? The sudden burst of spiritual energy also attracted the attention of countless martial artists in Sinkhole City. Every time before Sinkhole Sky opened, countless battles would break out in Sinkhole City. The martial artists who came to Sinkhole City were all arrogant geniuses from the 9 regions. It was very common for them to fight each other. Many people were willing to observe this sort of exchange carefully. After all, in the Sinkhole Sky, every martialist was an opponent. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll win 100 battles. In such a battle, they also wanted to observe each other's weaknesses. Numerous gazes were already focused on them, and the warriors present had already sensed it. Very well, I'll defeat you in front of so many people. Let's see if an ant like you still dares to provoke the Black Sky sect. The man with a hawk nose laughed maniacally as countless fist winds blasted toward Chu Fengmian. 10 heavenly fists. This is an ancient martial technique. It's indeed powerful, but in the hands of a piece of trash, it's nothing. Chu Fengmian said casually as his body suddenly moved. His spiritual energy immediately transformed into a gigantic battle dragon claw as he clawed at Yi Qingyu. The battle dragon claw swept across the sky, instantly shattering the fist wind that filled the sky. There were guests in the past 3 days, so he had to run around during the day. There wasn't enough time. I'll update as much as I can. I can't guarantee anything, but I'll try my best. Chapter 709. Boom! The battle dragon claw blasted towards the eagle-nosed man after destroying the All Heaven's 10 fists. Chu Fengmian's battle dragon claw blasted out in a disdainful manner. The eagle-nosed man hadn't expected Chu Fengmian's strength to reach such a level. He wanted to retreat and dodge, but the speed of Chu Fengmian's battle dragon claw was much faster than his. Bang! A sound was heard. The eagle-nosed man's chest was hit. A bronze mirror suddenly appeared in his mouth, but it was shattered by the battle dragon claw in the next moment. However, the bronze mirror had neutralized more than half of the battle dragon claw's power. The eagle-nosed man was sent flying and fell to the ground, spitting out a few mouthfuls of blood. If it weren't for the copper mirror neutralizing half of the force, the eagle-nosed man would have been killed by the battle dragon's claw. The All Heaven's 10 Fists was defeated just like that. Although the Black Sky sect isn't comparable to the 7 major sects, it's only second to them. The All Heaven's 10 Fists is one of the Black Sky sect's secret techniques, but it was neutralized just like that. This man is also one of the top 10 geniuses in the southern region, but he couldn't even withstand a single blow. When did such a person appear in the desolate northern region? Let's wait and see. The disciples of the Black Sky sect have always been arrogant. Now that they've suffered such a loss, they definitely won't take it lying down. If they fight, it'll be good for us too. Around them, many warriors couldn't help but start discussing when they saw this scene. The eagle-nosed man was able to come to Sinkhole City because he was one of the top 10 geniuses in the southern region martial competition. He was also a disciple of the Black Sky sect. Now that he was defeated by Chu Fengmian in a single blow, it greatly exceeded many people's expectations. The northern region could only be ranked in the lower half of the 9 regions. The disciples of the northern region had never been on their radar, so many people were curious about Chu Fengmian's identity. The disciples of the Black Sky sect looked at Chu Fengmian coldly. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent, as if they were looking at a dead man. An honorable martial artist who dared to provoke the Black Heaven sect would only face death. The young man called Senior Brother Mu coldly said as he looked at Chu Fengmian. Aren't your methods a little too vicious? Vicious? I'm already being merciful by not killing him. Otherwise, do you think that little heart-protecting mirror would be enough to block my attack? Chu Fengmian looked at Senior Brother Mu and sneered. Know your place and scram. Otherwise, none of you will be able to enter the Sinkhole Heaven this time. As soon as Chu Fengmian's words came out, the surrounding warriors all had different expressions. These words were truly arrogant. The Black Heaven sect was second only to the disciples of the 7 major sections. Chu Fengmian was born in the North region. Even the North Sea Academy, the number 1 sect in the North region, couldn't compare to the Black Heaven sect. Chu Fengmian's words showed that he didn't care about the Black Sky sect disciples at all. Senior Brother Mu, let's attack together and kill this arrogant brat. Another heavenly profound sect disciple behind Senior Brother Mu shouted angrily. Their Black Sky sect had occupied 4 spots in the South region this time. This was enough to show how powerful the Black Sky sect was. Now that they were in the Sinkhole City, they were forced to such a state by Chu Fengmian, a martial artist from the North region. It was simply humiliating for them. Wait! Senior Brother Mu suddenly shouted when he heard the words of the Black Sky sect disciples. He stopped the 2 Black Sky sect disciples who were about to attack. Alright, the Black Sky sect admits defeat this time. Brat, do you dare to say your name? When we reach the Sinkhole Heaven in the future, I will definitely take your life. Senior Brother Mu looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted loudly. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Senior Brother Mu didn't want to attack anymore. Chu Fengmian's attack just now had already demonstrated his strength. He was definitely not a weakling. In his heart, he was confident that he could defeat Chu Fengmian. However, if he attacked in the Sinkhole City, he would easily expose his trump card. He also wanted to save his trump card for when they really entered the Sinkhole Heaven and fought for the treasures. If he used his trump card now and exposed too much, it would only result in a lose-lose situation. Chu Fengmian of the North Sea Academy. Chu Fengmian said calmly. Just based on this sentence of yours, when we enter the Sinkhole Heaven, I will definitely kill every single one of your Black Sky sect disciples. Chu Fengmian's understatement revealed the arrogance in his words. Let's go. Senior brother Mu's expression became more and more furious because of Chu Fengmian's words. He couldn't wait to kill Chu Fengmian now to vent the anger in his heart. However, when he thought of the treasures in the sinkhole heaven, he suppressed the anger in his heart. With a wave of his hand, he grabbed the eagle-nosed man and left with the other 2 Black Sky Sect disciples. The sudden end of the battle didn't surprise many people. After all, the real purpose of the martial artists who came to the Sinkhole City was to obtain the treasures in the Sinkhole Heaven. Before entering the Sinkhole Heaven, of course, it was better to hide as much as possible. Therefore, even the arrogant Black Sky Sect disciples could only back down now. I didn't expect such a genius to appear in the North region this time. Looking at his martial technique, it's an extremely pure martial technique of the Dragon Clan. It seems that he has obtained a great opportunity. It's very likely that he obtained the cave mansion of Dragon Emperor Yen Gu in the Void Sea. Although the martial technique of the Dragon Clan is difficult to deal with, it's nothing. This person is too reckless. He exposed his strength in advance. When we enter the Sinkhole Heaven, he will definitely be targeted and killed first. This kid's strength is not bad, but he's extremely stupid. Does he really think that he can contend with the Black Sky Sect? Mu Xie is the genius ranked second on the list of top 100 talents in the South region. In the North region, he can defeat everyone. He doesn't want to fight because he's hiding his strength. When we enter the Sinkhole Heaven, this kid will be a dead man. A martial artist looked at Chu Fengmian, shook his head, and simply left. The surrounding martial artists gradually dispersed. Many people were secretly planning how to deal with Chu Fengmian, especially using various means to deal with Chu Fengmian's martial technique of the Dragon Clan. The martial artists in the Sinkhole Heaven were all peerless geniuses in the 9 regions. It was easy for them to think of ways to deal with Chu Fengmian. Every venerated martialist here had obtained countless opportunities and adventures. Killing one of them was equivalent to obtaining a huge treasure trove. Many martialists were already prepared to kill Chu Fengmian. I'll resume updating today. I'll try my best to catch up tomorrow. I've been to the hospital for the past 2 days, and it's the first time I've taken an ambulance. I'm so tired that I can't sleep well. This is an emergency. I can't deal with it without saving. I'm sorry. Chapter 710. Let's go. Since Mu Xie had taken the initiative to leave, Chu Fengmian could not be bothered with him anymore. He could tell that Mu Xie had concealed a lot of his strength. His true strength was probably on par with Yi Tianjun, the cold-faced demon lord, and the others. It would not be an easy task for Chu Fengmian to deal with him. However, Chu Fengmian would not be afraid of Mu Xie in a real battle of life and death. No one wanted to reveal their trump cards in advance, and Chu Fengmian was no exception. Once they entered the returning ruined sky, Chu Fengmian would have 10,000 ways to kill Mu Xie and the Black Heaven Sect disciples. Wang Hui was slightly stunned when he heard Chu Fengmian's words, but he quickly reacted. This way, please. As Wang Hui spoke, he brought Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli away. They arrived at one of the largest cave residences in En Ruin City and entered it. This cave dwelling was one of the upper 9 heavens cave dwellings in the returning ruined city. It was the cave dwelling with the best resources in the city. Seeing Chu Fengmian enter, the faces of the Black Heaven Sect's disciples were filled with hatred. These disciples of the Black Heaven Sect could be said to be powerful existences in the southern region. No one dared to compete with them, let alone make an enemy out of them. Now that they had suffered such a loss at the hands of Chu Fengmian, their eyes were filled with anger. The spiritual energy in their bodies was condensed, and they looked like they could fly into a rage at any time. However, in front of Mu Xie, they did not dare to make a move. Now is not the time to get into a conflict with this person. He dares to provoke our Black Heaven Sect, so he is already a dead man. However, our purpose this time is still for the treasures in the returning ruined sky. It is not good to expose too much now. Once we enter the returning ruined sky, It will be the time of his death. Mu Xia coldly opened his mouth and said. His words were filled with anger. He glanced at the eagle-nosed man and said, "Take good care of junior brother Hu. Take good care of junior brother Hu. Let him recover from his injuries before the returning ruined sky opens." Yes. The other two heavenly black sect disciples hurriedly nodded their heads and brought the eagle-nosed man to a slightly smaller cave to recuperate. Chu Fengmian's battle had stirred up some waves in the peaceful returning ruined city. Many people were discussing this matter. In particular, Chu Fengmian had defeated the eagle-nosed man in one move, which had surprised many people. A decent genius had finally appeared in the northern region, which had never produced any kind of expert. This kind of discussion quickly died down. Most of the warriors had already chosen their own cave abodes, so there was no conflict. At this time, it was the most foolish thing to do to start a conflict. However, it had been peaceful all along. It seems like the opening of the returning ruins heaven has attracted most of the geniuses from the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian sat in the cave of the upper 9 heavens and glanced at the auras of countless warriors outside as he muttered to himself. The cave of the upper 9 heavens was an incomparably huge courtyard. In this courtyard, rich spiritual energy had even formed a small spiritual spring. The spiritual liquid within was condensed from the purest spiritual energy. This courtyard was definitely not inferior to some of the cultivation's sacred grounds outside. Chu Fengmian sat beside the spiritual spring and absorbed the energy within. Although his strength had reached a bottleneck and could not improve further, Chu Fengmian was able to condense the spiritual energy within into spiritual stones and store them in his spatial ring to accumulate power. These geniuses are just right. Everyone has countless fortuitous encounters, and many of them know many sword techniques. They are very useful to me. This is the best opportunity for me to reform the 9 regions sword technique. Chu Fengmian looked at the warriors around him and sneered inwardly. My mysterious black sword formation can still be refined. The spiritual weapons in their hands can be integrated into the mysterious black sword formation. All of their martial techniques can be integrated into my 9 region sword technique. When we reach the returning ruined sky, it will be time for me to go on a killing spree. Murderous intent flashed in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Now, many of the warriors outside wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, but Chu Fengmian also had the same idea. Whoever dared to provoke Chu Fengmian would kill them. In the returning ruined sky, there were no rules. Chu Fengmian could directly kill anyone he encountered. Yueli, when you reach the returning ruined sky, be careful. The formation to enter the returning ruined sky is extremely chaotic. It is unknown where you will appear after entering. It is very likely that you will be directly transported to some dangerous place. If you encounter danger, try your best to hide. As long as you crush the Jade Talisman, I will be able to find you and help you. Chu Fengmian looked at Han Yueli beside him. The spiritual energy in his hand condensed into a Jade Talisman and he directly handed it over. The returning ruined sky was an independent space. The so-called opening was a supreme method used by many experts. They took advantage of the moment when the power of the returning ruined sky was at its weakest to tear a hole in it. However, once a warrior entered, it was unknown where they would be transported. Therefore, Chu Fengmian could not guarantee that he would be with Han Yueli. Moreover, there were some unlucky warriors who entered and were directly transported to some dangerous place in the returning ruined sky and died on the spot. The number of warriors who could truly leave the returning ruined sky alive was less than 30%. At least 70% of the warriors would die in there. However, if they could leave the returning ruined sky alive, they would be able to obtain great benefits. For example, Merciless Tyrant's strength could only be ranked at the bottom among the warriors who entered the returning ruined sky. He did not have the opportunity to obtain great treasures, but he still had so much to gain. Such a great harvest was enough to allow countless genius warriors to enter, and there would even be a quota. Han Yueli took the Jade Talisman and nodded solemnly. She now knew about the dangers of the returning ruined sky. the survival rate was less than 30%. No one could underestimate the dangers of the returning ruined sky. In the returning ruined sky, any warrior would be an enemy. The only person one could rely on was oneself. Although Hanuali's current strength was not considered the best among the warriors who entered the returning ruined sky this time, she was not weak either. It should not be too dangerous. 7 days passed quickly. Over the past 7 days, many cultivators had come to the Sinkhole City, resulting in a few conflicts. However, these conflicts stopped at a certain point. Everyone occupied a cave residence and began to rest. It was not until 7 days later that a bell suddenly rang throughout the returning ruined city. Chapter 7:11. The sound of the bell reverberated through the entire returning ruined city. The moment Chu Fengmian heard the sound of the bell, he slowly opened his eyes. Hanuali, who was beside him, did the same. The two figures immediately walked out of the cave. Outside, almost all of the warriors in Sinkhole City walked out of their cave dwellings the moment they heard the sound of the bell. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the sky. Rumble! The moment countless warriors walked out of their caves, a huge amount of spiritual energy suddenly descended from the sky. This spiritual energy was like a long river that extended from the sky to returning ruined city. In this long river, countless figures descended one after another. The aura of each of these figures was extremely terrifying. Even the weakest aura was at least beyond the life and death realm. These people were the big shots of the 9 regions. They had all arrived. Many of the geniuses who had chosen to enter returning ruined sky had strength comparable to peak life and death realm experts. Some even surpassed the peak life and death realm. These geniuses who had come to enter returning ruined sky were all prideful people. Therefore, to suppress them, one had to be an expert beyond the life and death realm. Therefore, among the experts who had arrived, the weakest one had to be a life and death realm expert who had stepped onto the life and death steps. You are all geniuses from the 9 domains. You are all here for the opening of the returning ruined sky. The returning ruined sky has opened countless times. You should know the various situations that have occurred. I will not explain them one by one. A white-haired old man among this group of experts suddenly spoke. The white-haired old man's aura was several times stronger than the other experts around him. Clearly, he was an expert with high attainments on the life and death steps. The white-haired old man's strength was unfathomable. Chu Fengmian could feel that if the white-haired old man wanted to attack, he could instantly kill Chu Fengmian. Right now, Chu Fengmian was strong enough to fight against life-saving experts and even eternal life experts. However, this was only the first 2 steps of the life and death steps. Experts who had truly reached the top of the life and death steps were still far from Chu Fengmian's strength. Chu Fengmian stood where he was, concealing his various fortuitous encounters to prevent other experts from discovering him. As this old man spoke, his gaze swept over everyone present. The 100 martial artists who had obtained the right to enter the returning ruins heaven were all present. Although entering the returning ruins sky was fraught with danger, none of the martialists who managed to obtain a spot would choose to give up. After all, the returning ruins sky contained countless treasures and opportunities. No one was willing to give up such a good opportunity. Even if it was full of danger, no one was willing to let go of it. Apart from their own aptitudes, almost everyone had gone through countless life and death situations to reach their current level. None of them were afraid of death. After sweeping his gaze across the crowd, the white-haired old man nodded and continued to speak. The opening of the returning ruins sky will only last for a month. After a month, we will join forces again to tear the space apart for 2 hours. You must leave within these 2 hours. Otherwise, you will be trapped in the returning ruins sky forever. The white-haired old man said coldly. Hearing this, Chu Fengmian nodded his head. A place like the returning ruins sky was fraught with danger at every moment. A month's time was the best choice. If they really stayed there for 3 years, perhaps none of the countless martial artists would be able to come out alive. That would truly be a loss that would outweigh the gains. Let's cut the crap. We are going to open the passage to the returning ruined sky now. All the martial artists can enter. The white-haired old man said coldly as he gathered his spiritual energy. Beside him, the other experts were also gathering their strength. These experts were all experts from the major forces of the 9 regions. There were dozens of them, and they gathered their energy and infused it into the white-haired old man's body. The white-haired old man waved his hand and suddenly tore the sky. The sky was torn apart by his claw, and countless cracks appeared. Behind the crack was a completely different region, as if it was another world. Behind the sky was the returning ruined sky. Swoosh! 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 The moment the space was torn apart, countless figures made their move. In the cave dwelling around Chufengmian, several figures moved in the air. They stepped on the air and directly leaped into the torn space, rushing toward it. These people had star charts engraved on their bodies. As they leaped into the air, every step they took turned into a meteor. These martial artists were the disciples of Dubhe Hall, one of the 7 major sects. Apart from them, almost all the remaining disciples of the 7 major sects had already rushed forward. The disciples of the 7 major sects were the first to make their move, as if they wanted to seize the opportunity. In the returning ruined sky, there were countless treasures and opportunities. However, to seize the opportunity, even if one was a second faster, might be enough to obtain one more opportunity. Therefore, countless martial artists wanted to compete and enter the returning ruined sky. Bam! However, at this moment, a burst of spiritual energy suddenly erupted in the air. An honorable martial artist wanted to compete with the disciples of the 7 major sects. He wanted to take a step forward and seize the opportunity, but he was hit by a palm from a 9-demon city disciple. He was sent flying to the ground and suffered a lot of injuries. Damn it! The people of the 7 major sects are really overbearing. The martial highnesses could not help but curse at the sight of this. The disciples of the 7 major sects seemed to have an agreement not to attack each other and seize the opportunity. However, the more the disciples of the other sects wanted to enter, the more they would stop them. The disciples of the 7 major sects even left a few people behind to block the other martial artists, so that the other disciples could seize the opportunity and wantonly plunder. Chufengmian could also see that the disciples of the 7 major sects were attacking the other martial artists, preventing them from entering. The disciples of the 7 major sects are even more overbearing than they were 10,000 years ago. Chufengmian looked at the sky and suddenly sneered. If this continued, the treasures would be plundered by the disciples of the 7 major sects first. When they entered, they would only be able to pick up the leftovers. Chufengmian didn't come to the returning ruined sky to pick up the leftovers of others. Let's go! Chufengmian whispered to Hanueli beside him. His body flew straight up into the sky. Chapter 7:12. Up in the sky. At least half of the warriors from the 7 major sects had already entered. The remaining warriors had joined forces to stop the other warriors from entering. Humph, a treasure land like the returning ruined sky shouldn't be shared with these trash. Do they think they can get the treasures? It's better for you to obediently follow behind the 7 great sects and pick up the leftovers. A Alpha Hall disciple with a star chart on his body sneered. That's right. Letting these people enter the sinkhole sky is a waste of treasures. Why don't we stop all of them here and let them know that the treasures in the sinkhole sky are not what they deserve? Another disciple from the 7 major sects said. At this moment, a few other supremacies could no longer hold themselves back and launched attacks at the sky. The End Ruins Heaven was a place with countless treasures. Now that they were blocked outside, who could endure it? They could not help but attack one after another, intending to force their way in. The situation was getting more and more chaotic. The experts who had torn a crack in the returning ruined sky were now standing in the air with their hands behind their backs, looking at the scene indifferently. Their agreement was to open the returning ruined sky. As for other things, such as fighting, it was not part of their agreement. the returning ruined sky had been opened. As for how many treasures one could get from it, it would depend on the warrior's luck. Without strength, even if the returning ruined sky opened, one could only follow behind and pick up the treasures that others did not want. No matter where one went, strength was respected. Without strength, it was meaningless. Do it! Chu Fengmian shouted. The spiritual energy in his body suddenly exploded. The power of the ancient war dragon bloodline was pushed to the extreme. Suddenly, he rushed up to the sky and flew directly. His body began to change rapidly. With the help of the spiritual energy, he suddenly turned into an ancient war dragon and flew towards the returning ruined sky. Countless warriors around him felt the aura and stepped back. At this moment, Chu Fengmian did not intend to wait any longer. There were countless treasures in End Ruined Sky and Chu Fengmian did not want to be a step behind others. He transformed into an ancient war dragon and charged forward, intending to take Hanueli with him into the returning ruined sky. What? Stop him! This is the venerable one who fought with the Black Heaven sect. We can't let him in. The disciples of the 7 great sects also noticed Chu Fengmian's presence. One by one, they urged their spiritual energies to stop Chu Fengmian. One of them, a 3-meter-tall brawny man, strode forward and arrived in front of Chu Fengmian. The burly man's muscles had a metallic luster to them. Obviously, he was a body-refining martial artist. Among the 7 major sects, only the Sage Ruler sect was a body-refining sect. The Sage Ruler sect had the most perfect body-refining technique among the 9 domains. The disciples of the Sage Ruler sect did not cultivate martial arts or weapons. They only cultivated their bodies, which was the ultimate body. When the Sage Ruler sect disciple saw Chu Fengmian approaching, he strode forward and landed a punch on Chu Fengmian. Bam! When this punch was thrown out, the surrounding space shattered. The power contained within it was shocking to the extreme. Even peak life and death experts would be killed by this punch. However, Chu Fengmian's expression did not change. In the face of the incoming punch, he pushed the power of the War Dragon bloodline in his body to the extreme. Dragon scales condensed on his body. The dragon scales were densely packed and formed an array. The power of the array was added to Chu Fengmian's body. His body suddenly collided with the punch. Bam! When the two forces collided, the Sage Ruler sect disciple's eyes widened. He could feel that Chu Fengmian's power was not inferior to his. In fact, Chu Fengmian's power surpassed his. The power of his punch dissipated when it collided with Chu Fengmian's attack. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's dragon claw slammed into the Sage Ruler sect disciple's body. The Sage Monarch sect disciple stumbled back a few hundred steps before he managed to stabilize himself. However, a white mark had been left on his metallic skin. What incredible power! I did not expect such a person to appear in this remote northern region. After the Sage Ruler sect disciple was sent flying, he regained his senses and wanted to attack again. However, the primordial war dragon that Chu Fengmian had transformed into paid no attention to him. Instead, he flew straight towards the crack in the returning ruined sky. Not good. One sure failed to stop him. Let's stop him first. Seeing that Chu Fengmian was able to force the Sage Ruler sect disciple to retreat, the other disciples of the 7 great sects were shocked. Their figures moved one after another as they tried to surround Chu Fengmian from all directions. Trying to stop me? Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. His incomparably huge body of the battle dragon danced in the air. Battle dragon dances in the firmament. Boom! The spiritual energy blasted the disciples of the 7 great sects away. None of them could stop Chu Fengmian, and each of them suffered a great loss. Let's go! Chu Fengmian seized the opportunity and had no interest in continuing the fight. It would take a lot of effort for him to defeat these disciples of the 7 great sections. The most important thing now was to enter the returning ruined sky. As for these people, Chu Fengmian did not have the time to waste on them. Chu Fengmian's body reverted back to its original form. He grabbed Hanueli and turned into countless afterimages as he leaped into the returning ruined sky. Let's go! Seeing that Chu Finmian had successfully entered the returning ruined sky, the remaining warriors could no longer hold themselves back and took action one after another. Soon, more warriors entered the returning ruined sky. As for the disciples of the 7 great sects, they were gradually unable to withstand the siege and retreated into the returning ruined sky. The opposite side is the returning ruined sky. Chu Finmian and Hanyu Ali's bodies entered the crack. Chu Finmian could feel that the surrounding crack was extremely unstable. As they approached the returning ruined sky, their bodies were swept up by 2 different forces and brought away. The 2 forces brought Chu Finmian and Hanyu Ali into the returning ruined sky. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.